Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Naruto. I have set my skills to the limit. Chapter 81. Until the end, Mr. Meng's Xiangtian was defeated in a burst of size. Okay, I admit it, I deleted you. Actually, even if you don't tell me, we've already discovered it when we first entered the village. Seeing that the old man finally admitted it, Shenyi stepped forward and explained. What, doesn't it sound like I said it? Your acting skills are very good, but the collapsed house and the dried blood show that this place has been dilapidated for at least a few months. Then you still let me act like this? Xiangtian was very puzzled. To these ninjas, he was obviously like a child in front of adults, who had no power to fight back. Shenyi gave another answer to this, you are our employer. We can only choose to do or not to do what the employer asks. Even if we know that the employer's words are false, we still have to implement them. Hearing this, Meng's Xiangtian also sighed, as if he was extremely regretful for his actions just now. No wonder it is said that Konoha's ninjas are of high quality. It turns out that is really the case. I'm honored, but you should just tell me what's going on. Facing Mukata's compliments, although the few people love to hear them, the task is still the top priority for the ninja. Actually, I didn't mean to lie to you. It's just that those robbers are too powerful. I'm afraid that if they find out that I escaped, the whole family may lose their lives. Meng's Xiangtian said while tidying up the dilapidated hut for a long time. He seemed to have infinite memories of the old man here. A young boy in exile came to our village about 3 months ago. We don't know his identity, but at that time he was covered with injuries. If he is not rescued in time, he may not survive a day. As he spoke, the old man seemed to notice that everyone was standing and listening to him, so he pointed to the place that could barely be called a bed, and motioned for everyone to sit there and rest. The teenager we rescued quickly recovered and was grateful to us, but the people who chased him also rushed over, saying that he is an exiled ninja and needs our cooperation to hunt him down. Meng's Xiangtian's eyes were full of memories, and the story he told seemed to happen yesterday. After getting along for a long time, we know that he doesn't look like that kind of villain, but the other party has a lot of people and we have no choice but to help him escape secretly. Hearing this, Shenyi nodded. This kind of thing often happens in the ninja world, not to mention that the country of grass is a small country sandwiched in the middle of many fights, so it is normal for exiled ninjas to escape here. It's just that each village has its own hunting team, which is used to hunt down their former teammates. People in this kind of team are generally ruthless, and basically they don't end well when they meet, so it is reasonable for Mr. Xiangtian and the others to be unlucky. After letting the boy go, the hunting troops also left. We thought we had done a good deed, but we didn't expect that it was because of our kind thoughts that we were killed. It didn't take long for Ren, who was rescued earlier, to come back here, and gathered a large group of thugs from somewhere, just because we had brought him to Lei Mai to witness the wonder of Lei Shi. Said that Lei Shi Shenye couldn't help but recall the shimmering stone in the arms of the man who ambushed Orochimaru. After Shenye used chakra to detect it, he found that the stone only had the ability to conduct. Why would a rebel be interested in this kind of thing? I'm sorry, Mr. Mukoda Yumazawa, you should find ninjas from your own country for this kind of mission with ninjas from other countries. Why do you go to Konoha? I also asked about this matter. Those people who were recruited later were not ninjas, only the exiled ninja before. But I don't know what country they are, so I can only look for a nearby big country. Orochimaru's question hit the nail on the head. Although Meng's Mushin's answer was fine, it would have been more credible if he hadn't lied to everyone before. After listening to Xiangtian's words, everyone probably had a new understanding. In fact, the task itself has not changed, but the background of Mr. Xiangtian is a little different, but this is easy to say. After all, ninjas are to complete the task, not to investigate other people's family background. After a simple analysis, Orochimaru stood up and asked Xiangtian, where is this thunder vein and what is it like inside? Our mission this time is to save people. If the bandits come, we will destroy them directly. Judging from the raiders just now, the combat effectiveness of this group of people is not very high, and if they go well, they can be eliminated in one go. As soon as Mr. Xiangtian heard that he was about to take action, he immediately stood up excitedly, and hurriedly led a few people outside, saying emotionally while walking, "Thank you for believing in me, Limai is not far from our village, it's just a distance of climbing a mountain, but there are always guards over there, if you go in rashly, you will be found. How many are they? Shen Yi suddenly realized a problem. Although those people were not strong, but as the saying goes, ants kill elephants, if there are hundreds of them, it will take a while to stand there and let 4 people kill them. Regarding this, Shang Tian hesitated for a moment, and then said something that shocked everyone with great uncertainty. About 4 to 500. Seeing a few people in shock, he quickly added, at the beginning when we occupied our place, there were only more than 30 people, but after the occupation, I don't know why the number increased. Until I escaped a month ago, there were at least 200 people, and now there are more than 300 people. I'm really afraid of what will come. If there are really so many people, then I really have to think about it in the long run. Shen Yi, you and Rizai go to check the situation nearby first. Claw, you come with me, we will observe the situation around to meet them, and come back here to gather in an hour. Even Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas, did not follow the guarantee to retreat when facing so many people, so to be on the safe side, he made a plan, but it is not difficult to see that Orochimaru did not take this group of chickens and dogs seriously. Yes, for being able to not be with Orochimaru, Shen Yi almost applauded, but he restrained himself a little in front of everyone. Action. After speaking, the 4 of them moved separately at the door of the hut. It was almost dusk, and it was a good time to carry out the latent mission. During the continuous raids of the 2 of Shenye, Rizai, who had always been like a gourd, suddenly said, I heard that you defeated a talented person of the same age in the Hyuga family. What? Shen Yi had long since forgotten the unlucky guy he defeated when he first arrived in this world in order to let the sun, moon, and stars rest. He was stunned for a moment before he remembered. It seems to be the case. That's a capable companion named Hinata Morning Fire from the branch of our Hinata family. I answered his prayer and wanted to compete with you. Shen Yi's face turned black for a while. If you want to compete with me, just say it directly. What are you doing with him? So you are looking for a chance to compete with me. There is a chance, but right now is not the time. Riza obviously had a good impression of Shenye, and his tone of voice was very polite. While the 2 were talking, they had already arrived at the back of the mountain, and they could already see the faintly visible cave entrance on the other side of the mountain from a distance. I think this is Limai, can you see the situation over there with your white eyes? After listening to Shen Yi's words, Rizai lifted his chakra all over his body, and said lightly, white eyes. In an instant, the blue veins in the corners of Hyuga's eyes popped up, which is the unique white eyes of the Hyuga clan. It's not very clear, but the defense at the entrance of the cave is not very strong, we can take a closer look. Okay, thank you for your hard work. After speaking, Shenya put his hand on Hinata's shoulder and patted it twice, showing his comfort for his hard work. Well, it's okay, let's go ahead and probe. Speaking of that, Riji calmly shook Shenya's hand off his shoulders, obviously a little uncomfortable with this kind of intimate behavior. It's just that Shenyi seems to be so happy. System, did you invest in any skills just now? You must know that Bian, as Naruto's terrifying pupil technique, has the same shocking power as Uchiha's Sharingan, and as the big boss in the later stage, Kagayaji has the ability of this monitoring department. It's just that the system's answer really made Shenye a little bit uninterested. Successfully grab the skill. Huishin, the skill cooldown time is 10 minutes. Although this Huishin skill is also called a divine skill, and truly integrates offense and defense, it is really not worth mentioning compared to the most powerful Bai Yan. But this is considered a good result. If he really stole a Bagua 64 palm or something, and he didn't roll his eyes, then this opportunity was completely wasted. Shaking his head, Shenye didn't think about it so much, so he dodged to catch up with the advancing day. There are not many enemies in front. I will attract attention from the front. You will kill them with one blow from behind. Don't let them send out a signal. I heard that speed and strength are your strengths. Shenyi nodded. This day was obviously due to the fact that he had done his homework in advance of his ability, so he was so familiar with it, but that's okay, it wouldn't be too much effort to cooperate like this. The 2 of them dispersed in an instant, and Shenyi headed towards the entrance of the Shen cave from the other side, but some cubes behind him who thought it was convenient to retreat left behind the spells needed for the Flying Thunder God art. After a while, Shenye arrived at the position agreed upon by the two. At this moment, he was waiting for the day difference to make a little noise from the front, and then it was time for him to appear on the stage. Just in case, Shenyi turned on the fairy mode on the spot to absorb the energy of the heaven and the earth in case of emergency. Not long after Shenyi prepared, there was the sound of fighting in front of him, followed by a commotion in front of him. Many people armed with various weapons came out of the cave. What's the situation? Someone is coming in front, it seems to be holding back. Go back and call for rescue. After speaking, the man ran directly towards the place where the voice came from, while the man who asked the question ran in another direction, presumably to find his teammates. Shenyi, who had been eavesdropping behind the two of them, did not put them directly, but followed the man who was going to recruit rescuers secretly, trying to find the lair of these people. Within a few minutes, the man got into a nearby woods. Shenyi thought that looking out from the woods, it was a cottage, and it was shocking that this cottage had been taken care of by this group of people in such a short period of time. Seeing that the strong man was about to reach his destination, Shenyi directly stepped forward and knocked the man unconscious with a palm, and then dragged him to the depths of the deep forest. It seems that this is the lair of this group of people. The defense is good. It is still a bit difficult to get in. Let's leave a mark first. After speaking, Shenye found an inconspicuous place nearby and left the mark of Fei Lei Shen there, and concealed it for the sake of safety. Immediately afterwards, he looked in the direction he came from. The forest and Shendong were not very far away, but there were many towering trees between the two that blocked all the sound, which made even Shenye not feel any movement from there. It's time to go back and help the day's errand. After leaving these words, Shenyi directly used the Flying Thunder God technique, and instantly appeared behind Ri Jai. Why are you here so late? There were not many enemies in front of Richa, but there were more than a dozen people who fell on the ground. Let's go back and talk about it, and get rid of everyone in front of us first. Shenyi didn't have time to explain, and with great force, he directly blasted a bandit who was about to attack from the side. Seeing that Shenyi had thrown himself into the battle in no time, Richai just shook his head slightly. These people were not his opponents, but what made him angry was that he had a good impression of Shenyi at the beginning, and as a result, he suddenly violated the agreement between the two of them, which is obviously not what a good partner should do. It's just that the helplessness in his heart didn't show, and the day difference just continued to face the enemy in front of him. Within a few minutes, the two defeated all the enemies in front of them, leaving only one alive and tied up by the two to ask for information. Tell me, your history. That man was considered a tough guy. After the two of them tied him up, they didn't say a word the whole time, and after the two of them finished asking, they just said that they had the ability to kill me, and then fell into silence again. The two of you looked at me and I looked at you. They were obviously not very good at this kind of interrogation. Shenyi was thinking in his heart that it would be great if Yibixi was here at this time. It's a pity that reality can never be as beautiful as imagined, and the two had to work hard to get this person to speak. It's a pity that even if the two of them used the trick of tickling, there was still nothing they could do. Just when the two of them were at a loss what to do, there was a sudden sound of a signal bomb rising into the air behind them. Whoosh! The two turned their heads in panic, and found that one of the people lying on the ground was holding a signal transmitter and screaming up to the sky. Even if they found that the two were looking at them, they were indifferent. The brat still wants to stop us. I'll show you the capabilities of our mountain heroes in a while. Hearing this, Shenyi immediately laughed out loud. He is a mountain hero, isn't he just a mountain bandit? Besides, if there were not many of you, you would have rushed to the door a long time ago. It's a pity that the development of the matter is not as simple as Shenyi thought. Let's retreat first. I see that after the signal flare was sent out, there were a lot of chakra-steamed vegetables in the woods in front of us flying towards this side. The people who came here should not be weak. The words of the day's difference made Shenye stop the contempt in his heart. It is really not a good time to stay here. Let's go, let's make a strategic retreat first. Shenyi glanced at the stubborn man who was being helped and shook his head. It was obviously not a good choice to take him away, and turned his gaze to the man who fired the signal flare just now. Just wait to die. At this moment, this person has not realized his dangerous situation. The two boys who are full of joy will definitely be frightened by his own flare and run away, but unfortunately they are greeted with death-like eyes. You What are you doing? Without unnecessary nonsense, Shen Yi winked directly at Rizai, then came to the man who was tied up, and slapped him unconscious with a palm, and when he recovered, Rizai also tacitly knocked the other person unconscious. Let's go, it's not suitable to stay here for long. After talking about the day's errand, he was dressed and ready to run, but Shen Yi put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I want to see the strength of this group of people." For the strength of this group of people, Shen Yi always felt that this should not be the case. If it is just some ordinary people, then only 30 or so people can conquer all the people in a village. If Shen Yi's expectations are not bad, the group of people who took pictures later were all just for the sake of numbers, and only the 30 or so people who came first were truly top-notch, or this group of people had any special weapons that would allow them to have top-notch combat effectiveness. Are you crazy, staying and being surrounded? You don't think you can escape easily when you are surrounded by hundreds of people, do you? Have you forgotten that I am a ninja known for speed? Regarding Riji's unbelieving attitude, Shen Yi just smiled back. The flying thunder god's mark had been left in the woods when he came from a distance. As long as Shen Yi moved his chakra, the two of them could be teleported away instantly, even if they were surrounded by thousands of people. Riza saw that Shen Yi was so confident and chose to believe him. After all, as a man who can defeat the genius Uchiha Fugaku, he should have some means. Not long after, the sun difference with his eyes open reminded that the people not far away had arrived. The trap we prepared should almost be triggered. As soon as Shen Yi's words fell, there was a scream from the distant woods. It was the two of them who used the few shurikens left in their hands to set up a crude trap. This also allowed the two to determine the strength of this group of people. The reason why it is called a simple trap is precisely because this trap is indeed very simple. As long as anyone with a little training experience will not be caught, it is a pity that this group of dolls is not regular. It's just that the screams only lasted for a while and then ended. It was obvious that everyone was prepared, and it was impossible for them to be recruited. It was you two brats who attacked the mine. The headed man in the blood-red armor was obviously not very optimistic about the two of them, but he only reacted after discovering the Konoha forehead guards on the foreheads of the two of them. These two boys are Konoha's ninjas. Enter the state of emergency preparation. Following the shout of the leader, the team of nearly 100 people behind them directly drew out the samurai swords they carried with them. This knife, what's new? Seeing that Shen Yi was interested in the knife, Riza asked casually. Shen Yi didn't speak, but just took out the stone in his arms, and the faint light was actually brighter than before in the interweaving of light and shadow. Before the two of them understood the reason, the group of people on the opposite side had already rushed over, and the samurai sword in their hands brought gusts of wind, which sounded very scary. Brush. Shen Yi narrowly dodged a knife, and the dodged blade slashed on the ground, making neat cuts on the hard marble floor. Sigh. Both of them couldn't help but gasp. The guards at the entrances just now didn't use such terrifying weapons. Those knives could not even leave a trace on the ground. The comparison of these weapons is not 130. Gossip. The palm of the air. After a battle, Rizai's physical strength did not decrease, but for some unknown reason, this air palm hit on the enemy did not have the previous effect. It just knocked the man back 2 steps, and then the man rushed towards the two of them as if nothing had happened. How so? Although I don't know how to do it, Kamiya knows that the special skill of the Hyuga family is to hit the chakra into the enemy's body in the form of strength. Even if there is no obvious injury, it will make people uncomfortable for a while. This is not difficult to see from the enemies he faced before, but this time the enemies looked like iron walls, completely affected by every little bit. Shen Yi, who didn't believe in evil, also dodged a knife and punched an enemy hard, but even with the huge bonus, he didn't achieve the expected effect. He just knocked the enemy away, and then the man struggled twice before standing up again. It's just that the man didn't move forward like before, but just silently followed behind the others. It was obvious that Shen Yi was still hurting him all of a sudden. I can't beat it, retreat. Faced with this kind of situation, Shen Yi knew that it was no longer a situation that the two of them could handle, but at some point the day difference had already fought and retreated far away, and the two of them had been stopped by countless armored troops. In desperation, Shen Yi had no choice but to resort to that trick. Without any warning, Shen Yi's hands suddenly turned into countless little snakes, spitting snake letters at the enemy in front of him. Hidden Shadow Snake Hand. Shen Yi knew how powerful the snake hand was. As a one-on-one restraint move, it was almost invincible, but it was a bit powerless in the face of many people, but what Shen Yi needed now was the deterrent effect. Sure enough, everyone was terrified after seeing Shen Yi's hand turned into a small snake. The light ones retreated one after another, and the severe ones fainted from fright. Good chance. Shen Yi made a move of the hidden shadow snake hand and rushed towards the direction of the sun, and the armored troops blocking the way were frightened out of their wits. Day difference, catch that prisoner. Hearing Shen Yi's words, Rizai turned around in reality. After seeing Shen Yi's hand, he was startled for a while, but he reacted in an instant, and directly picked up the person who was thrown away earlier with one hand and opened the way in Shen Yi's direction. The moment the two met, Shen Yi turned one hand back into a normal arm, and at the same time controlled the other hand to wrap around an armored soldier, and instantly activated the Flying Thunder God technique. Bang bang. There was a sound of the body falling to the ground, and when the two came back to their senses, they had already returned to the woods near the small village. How is this going? Rizai and Shenye, who returned to the grove, both collapsed on the ground exhausted. This level of fighting consumed a huge amount of chakra. With the current chakra reserves of the two, it really wouldn't take a minute longer. Shen Yi also shook his head after listening to Rizai's question, expressing that he didn't know why the fighting power of this group of people soared, but just pretended to look over at the armored soldier who was knocked unconscious. His face was full of longing and doubt. The weapons held by these armored troops were obviously made of leishi. This was discovered by Shenye when he first saw the glowing armor and weapons on their bodies, but is leishi really so powerful? With this question in mind, Shen Yi stripped the armored soldier clean from top to bottom, removing the dreaded armor. But for some reason, Shen Yi always felt that this man's armor was not as shiny as when he was at the gate of Shandong just now. After he punched the armor, he found that it was not the astonishing almost invincible armor before. Accompanied by the great strength of Shen Yi, the originally terrifying armor shattered to the ground with a punch, and it was no longer as powerful as it looked just now. Why is this happening? Not only Shen Yi, but even the usually stable Rizai's eyes widened in disbelief. After all, the soldiers they faced were almost the same just now, and the strength of this armor went from almost invincible to shattering in just 1 minute. This difference is too great. Even if Shen Yi's normal circle strength is not small, it is enough to prove that the armor's defense power has been reduced a lot in an instant. But even if the two of them stared wide-eyed here, they couldn't think of a reason, so they had to save the doubts in their hearts, and only waited until they went back to the village to meet with Dashuan before making plans. It's almost time, should we go back to the village? Shen Yi estimated the time. It has been almost an hour since the two of them set off. If Orochimaru and Claw go well, they should have returned to the village by now. The day difference also nodded to Shen Yi, and then the two carried the two prisoners of war all the way back to the dilapidated village of Mengxiangtian. Back in the village, the two of them immediately felt that the atmosphere in the village was much more lively than before. When they looked closely, it was Mengxiangtian who was crying and crying with a young girl in his arms. They were surrounded by a dozen people, including Orochimaru and Claw. The two people who were at a loss didn't know what was going on, until their claws wrinkled their noses and ran back after realizing that the two had returned. The commotion you made just now is not small. If it weren't for you, it would be impossible for Teacher Dashimaru and I to rescue these people. Speaking of claws, he pointed to the dozen or so people who looked like refugees not far away, and Shen Yi took a closer look. All of these people looked sallow and emaciated after not eating enough for a long time. Obviously they had suffered a lot under the supervision of those bandits. While Shen Yi was observing these people carefully, Zhou couldn't stop observing the two prisoners brought back by Shen Yi and the others. Who are these two people? Shen Yi, who was obsessed with observation, didn't realize the problem of the claws, but just looked at the girl crying with Mengxiangtian and Orochimaru standing beside her. No matter how you look at this picture, it is so warm, but there is always such an indescribable sense of disobedience after Orochimaru enters the picture. This is the guard at the entrance of the cave, and one of the rescues brought by the guard. So the two of you were beaten to the brim by the rescuers they called. As one of the future elite Jonin, Claw's power of observation has been shown since he was a child, and he keenly found traces of fighting from the two of them. Obviously they were chased back. The enemy's reinforcements are extremely powerful, mainly because their equipment is extremely strange. Those people's equipment is particularly sophisticated. The armor is extremely powerful, and it cannot be solved by ordinary means. After being said a few words by the Claw, the top junior of the Hyuga family who hanged himself, Hinata couldn't hold back on his face, and quickly explained to her, but it was obviously not a belief expression on the Claw's face. Just when the two were arguing, Orochimaru walked over from the crowd with an idle expression on his face. How's the status of your two investigations? Speaking of investigating the information, both Shenye and Rizai blushed. They were only focused on fighting just now, and they were really confused about the information in the cave. We found that the guards at the entrance of the cave are not strong, but the armored soldiers in the backup force are well equipped. Although their strength is similar, their armor and weapons are obviously not ordinary. Although he didn't investigate at all, Shenye didn't want to reveal his mistake when facing Dashawan, and he didn't know if it was the resistance in his heart that was causing the trouble. One more thing, their weapons and armor should be able to maintain their strong characteristics in a certain special environment, and they will lose their tough characteristics after that special place. Shenyi conveniently handed the top piece of the shattered armor to Orochimaru. There is still some faint light on it, but it seems to be much weaker than before. Orochimaru seemed to be very interested in this kind of thing. After getting the fragment, he didn't ask any more questions, but just looked at the fragment for a long time and couldn't extricate himself. Shenyi saw that Orochimaru had lost his voice, and the two behind him were still arguing about the strength of the armored soldiers. The people in front had almost finished crying, so they simply came to the crowd and wanted to ask some questions. But before Shenye stepped forward to ask, the girl who had been throwing herself into Meng Xiangtian's arms screamed, and then hid behind Xiangtian as if seeing a ghost. Her eyes were full of fear. Seeing this situation, Shenye didn't know what to do, and he was about to move forward and stopped, not knowing what to do, and Meng's Mushin also found out this embarrassing situation. He smiled at Shenye and comforted the girl. Don't be afraid, they are the rescuers that Grandpa found, and they are with the people who rescued you. Hearing this, the girl poked her head out from behind the old man timidly, but the fear in her eyes was still so obvious. After Shenye spread her hands to signal that she was not threatening, she finally walked out from behind Meng Xiangtian and nodded to Shenya, but her eyes still stayed on the Konoha forehead on Shenya's head. I'm sorry, this is what I told you about my granddaughter Meng Zilong, who is so afraid of you because of those ninjas. Shenyi shook his head to indicate that he didn't care, and then he didn't know whether he should go up and ask. After thinking about it for a while, he decided to go back to his companion. As for the inquiry, let's talk about it later. Several people were also aware of Shenyi's embarrassing situation, but Orochimaru didn't seem interested at all, still studying the armor fragments in his hand, breaking off a bit from time to determine its composition. Returning to the side of the claws and day difference, Shenyi sighed softly. He had never expected such a situation. For Shenyi, every moment now is very important. After all, the enemy's base camp was disturbed just now, and now a group of hostages have been brought back. As long as the other party has no problem with their brains, they should soon find out what's going on. It's a pity that only Shenye himself is aware of the coming crisis, and the others are all relaxed and happy, as if they didn't realize it at all. The claws on the side seemed to have finally noticed Shenyi's entanglement, and came over to comfort him. Not only this girl, but other people are also very resistant to us. If we hadn't said Meng Xiangtian's name, they would not even want to go with us to save them. Kuromaru, who was lying on the side, also nodded sadly. Obviously the rescue mission just now was not as easy as it said. But if there is no information about the strange Leishi, we may have a hard time dealing with those people, but it seems that we can only wait until the evening. Sighing, Shenye became even more worried about the current situation, but since there was no other way, he could only hold on until those people could accept himself and others. Shenyi, you and I go to set up the enchantment, and the claws and day sent to erase the traces around, so that those people won't mention here. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Hearing these words, Shenya's back felt cold. Is Orochimaru finally going to attack him? Yes. Despite the endless reverie in his heart, Shenyi still complied. Everything now is Shenyi's suspicion, suspecting that Orochimaru has unreasonable thoughts about him, but to say that Orochimaru didn't do anything strange to him along the way, this makes Shenyi wonder what his plans are. Before leaving, Shen Yi still concealed himself and left emergency marks of the Flying Thunder God everywhere in the village for emergencies. After confirming the direction, several people split up and arrived at the designated location in a short time. Along the way, Shen Yi was always on guard against Orochimaru's actions, but there was nothing abnormal about Orochimaru except for some ninja experience that should be mentioned. This gave Shen Yi time to breathe a sigh of relief, and by the way replenished the exhausted chakra just now. You seem to be afraid of me, Shen Yi. Orochimaru took out the needed spell and handed it to Shen Yi, but he asked a random word when handing it over. It's just that this sentence made Shen Yi feel like falling into an ice cellar, and his muscles all over his body were tense to stare at Orochimaru in front of him. If Orochimaru had any abnormal intentions, Shen Yi would use Flying Thunder God without hesitation. Actually, you don't need to be so nervous. You are my best friend's younger brother. I won't let her be sad again. I just want to clear up your misunderstanding about me, but it seems that you don't really want to talk about it. Shen Yi never thought that Orochimaru would be so gentle, but when he thought about it again, he was afraid that this was another trick by Orochimaru, and his spirit that relaxed a little immediately tensed up again. For fog hidden formation, my new invention, can make the enemy invisible within a certain range. I have already given the other two to the claw. You can go to that direction and find a tree 1 kilometer away, and then go back to the village. I will use this technique here. Orochimaru was surprisingly good at taking care of people's feelings, which caused Shen Yi to wonder if the person in front of him was the real Orochimaru, but he timidly took the spell in Orochimaru's hand and rushed out in the direction Orochimaru was pointing at. It's just that what Shen Yi didn't know was that after he turned around and ran in that direction, Orochimaru behind him showed an expression of success. Shen Yi, even if you are cautious, what's the use of being careful? Even if I don't do anything, you will fall into my hands sooner or later. Shen Yi, who had calculated everything, never thought that his precautions along the way were completely correct, and it was also correct to leave the mark of Flying Thunder God all the way, but as long as he obeyed Dashawan, this was the only place where he failed in this operation. After leaving Orochimaru, Shen Yi did not forget to look around, and even turned on the chakra detection to check if anyone was catching up around him. After confirming that there was no one, he gradually relaxed. Along the way, Fiban Shen Yi began to think whether he had really misunderstood Orochimaru. In fact, the current Orochimaru did not have any dissatisfaction with the village, but just concentrated on research. But judging from the normal plot, Orochimaru should be conducting a very terrifying experiment now, and there were more than 60 young genius ninjas who were experimented by him. Why did he keep his hand? He couldn't understand it, but Shen Yi didn't intend to remove Orochimaru from the list of dangerous people. The strength of this kind of character was really looked down upon by the current Shen Yi, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with taking precautions. Just as Shen Yi was thinking about Orochimaru's strategy in his mind while driving between the trees, a sound of breaking through the air caught his attention. Before he had time to look back, Shen Yi directly bowed and fell from between the towering trees to the ground, and the moment Shen Yi landed on the ground, a series of explosions sounded from the foothold in the sky just now. I just used the probing ninjutsu just now, and it is still in the cooling down stage, so Shen Yi can only open the Sharingan. It's just that the Sharingan, which is only useful in battle, is far inferior to the white eyes that can directly observe chakra when observing the enemy. It's just that Shen Yi can only use this pupil technique at this stage. I didn't expect you to still have Sharingan, so that adult should be more interested. That adult, could it be Orochimaru? That's right, Kamiya, as the traveler who guides most of the main plots in Naruto, of course knows the two big figures in the Naruto world who most want to get Sharingan. One is Orochimaru, who just pointed him in the direction, and the other is Konoha's darkest existence, the leader of Root Shimura Danzo. Obviously, the one who can deal with these people is obviously Oshimaru-sama. It seems that my judgment is really correct. Orochimaru really wants to snatch himself back for experimentation, but this time I am afraid that he will be disappointed. Flying Thunder God Technique. Secretly running chakra to activate the Flying Thunder God Technique, but what happened next was beyond Shenya's expectations. Why is there no response? Secretly using Flying Thunder God in his heart, Shen Yi was stunned in place. His most proficient Flying Thunder God technique actually failed at this moment. System, what's going on? Back to the host, this space has been disturbed. It should be a method specially prepared by the other party to deal with Flying Thunder God. Flying Thunder God is temporarily useless. Hateful. Seeing this situation, Shenye could only open the Sharingan and look around, but there were dense forests in his sight, and there was no enemy army at all. Haha, brat, the teleportation technique has failed. We already have all the information about you. We have worked hard to deal with your troublesome technique. As the voice fell, a figure quickly rushed towards Kamiya from the side of Kamiya, but Kamiya with Sharingan opened caught his movement at once, and promptly pulled out his kunai from the ninja belt behind him and blocked it in the direction of the shadow. Ding! A metal collision came from between the two of them, and the figure that was flying over was also paused, and Shenyi also saw clearly the appearance of the person coming at this moment. With small eyes and no eyebrows, the entire mouth is surrounded by a scarf, and the forehead on his head is just a piece of grass. This man is actually a native ninja from the land of grass. The man was obviously surprised when Shenyi blocked him, but after this moment of surprise, he quickly distanced himself from Shenyi. I didn't expect you to be so strong. Even if you did your homework before, it still surprises me. In a moment of desperation, Shenyi didn't have time to think about it, and directly released Julie to confront the ninja from the country of grass, and it was also this action that made the ninja guarded and no longer dared to come forward for melee combat. Shenyi also got a chance to breathe at this moment, and quickly distanced himself from the figure, and then his eyes drifted to the surroundings, for fear that the person who came this time was not alone. HMPH, the boy is really smart, but no matter how smart he is, he's no match for me. The ninja from the country of grass also noticed that Shenyi was observing the surroundings, and they didn't give Shenyi a chance at all, and rushed towards Shenyi again. It's just that this time the ninja didn't directly charge head-on. While controlling the distance between the two to keep it not too close or far away, he tried to use ninjutsu to deal with Shenyi from a distance. But now Shenyi has opened Sharingan, and he is very clear about every gesture of the ninja in the country of grass. At the same time as he formed seals, Shenyi also made the same gesture. What? The prestige of Sharingan is well known in the ninja world, but the enemies who have seen Sharingan are all killed by Sharingan, so not everyone knows the ability of Sharingan. At least the ninjas in the country of grass in front of Kamiya do not know that Sharingan has the ability to copy other people's ninjutsu. But since the seal formation has already started, it can't be stopped, and the ninja is also biting the bullet and trying to compete with Shenyi in chakra control ability. However, what he didn't know was that Shenyi had been secretly accumulating the energy of the immortal mode just now. Although the accumulated energy is not much, if all of it is applied to this technique, the power will definitely not be overwhelmed. Wind escape, vacuum wave. Shenyi and the ninja from the country of grass used this ninjutsu almost every second. Two wind blades like sharp sickles raged between the two of them. In an instant, all the giant trees in the sky between the two were cut to pieces. The violent ninjutsu energy uncontrollably smashed the technique that sealed the surrounding space, and at that moment the system reminded Shenyi that he was using Flying Thunder God. But for the current Shenyi, it is no time to run away. The powerful wind escape ninjutsu will cut him into pieces the moment Shenyi stops supplying chakra. Shenyi fully understands this. Even if he was lucky enough to escape through the Flying Thunder God technique, the ninja from the land of grass would tell Orochimaru of his strength. In this case, it is better to kill this threat directly in the cradle. However, the ninjutsu duel was quickly decided. Although the ninjas in the country of grass are far more proficient in this move than Shenyi, it is a pity that Shenyi also instilled the power of nature into his wind escape. The defeat of the ninja of the country of grass was inevitable, and when he found out, it was too late to escape, and he was directly defeated with a scream. But after defeating that man, Shenyi didn't stop his ninjutsu, but turned his ninjutsu back directly. Ah, it's impossible. After another scream, Shenyi stopped releasing chakra. In fact, the ninja Kamiya behind him didn't notice it at first, but the powerful pupil power of Sharingan in the Fungdun confrontation just now found a figure in the black shadow when the tree was cut and flying. However, Shenyi didn't turn to him immediately. The first thing is that there should be no distraction in Fungdun's brutal duel. Even the iron armor and bronze helmet can't survive the duel between the two, so Shenyi was given a chance. At a time that seemed impossible, Shenyi, who had only graduated from school for a few days, defeated two enemy ninjas head-on. This was absolutely impossible in the eyes of others, and Shenyi realized it. After completing a series of counter kills, Shenyi sat on the spot and gasped for breath. This ninjutsu is strong, but the chakra loss is also horrific. It took only a few seconds to drain all the chakra in Shenyi's body. After using up the last bit of chakra in his body to detect the surroundings, Shenyi sat down and rested after confirming that the surroundings were safe. At the same time, Shenyi couldn't help thinking about how to face the next task, how to face Orochimaru, who had returned to the village. It's really difficult. After thinking about it, Shenyi didn't think that he could settle this incident with his own strength alone. Sanin was the enemy. A messenger folder was taken out of the backpack, and as long as there were passing pigeons around, the envelope could be taken away. Shenyi wrote a letter to Tsunade at home, and at this moment he could only resign himself to fate. Putting the charm given by Orochimaru on the designated position, Shenyi did not hesitate to use Fei Lei Shen to return to the village to mark the position. After all, if he meets a ninja again when he goes back, he may not be so lucky to escape. It's just that even if Flying Thunder God was used, Shenyi was the last one to return to the village. As Shenyi guessed, after seeing him coming back, Orochimaru frowned slightly and then returned to the image of an approachable teacher. Since everyone is back, I will use ninjutsu to seal the village in a barrier. After finishing speaking, Orochimaru sat directly on the ground and began to draw strange patterns, and Shenya also took advantage of this time to drag the claws and Hazashi aside. Do you have messengers with you? Although the two were confused, Claw still took out a scroll from the backpack and handed it to Shenyi. Ninja Dog sends a teleportation scroll. If you use this, the people of our Inuzuka family will feel the news. Never heard of it before. Shenyi nodded, half understood. Now it's not time to study. When it appeared, directly tore the scroll to let the claws release the scroll ninjutsu and insert the information into it. Of course, Shenyi did all of this carefully without being discovered by Orochimaru. At nightfall, the rescued people returned to their rooms, and the deserted village finally gained a little popularity. The granddaughter of Meng Xiangtian was no exception. After working for a long time, it was rare to live such an ordinary life. Under Meng Xiangtian's persuasion, she went to bed early, and Meng Xiangtian also consciously found Shenyi and the others directly after coaxing her granddaughter to sleep. I know you have a lot of questions. I will tell you everything I know. As for whether the bandits in the mountains want to be wiped out, it depends entirely on your wishes. After hearing it. At this moment, Meng Xiangtian left a somewhat different impression on Shenyi than before. The previous tricky and rigid old man actually had a bit of pleading when he spoke. Perhaps it was because he saw a little hope in despair, so he changed his attitude when facing Konoha ninjas like Shenyi. It starts from 15 years ago. We didn't have Thunderbolt here 15 years ago. This mountain was just an ordinary mountain, and the era of constant wars was even more cruel for a small country like ours. Our original residence was razed to the ground by powerful ninjas. Only 40 or 50 of us escaped desperately, and finally settled down here. And this place is not absolutely far away from disputes, but the remote environment here is much better than other places. But on that day, a group of ninjas from other countries fought here. The terrifying ninjutsu blew up the entire mountain pass, and the horrible ninjutsu seemed to be a move that would kill them all. After the explosion, there was no movement. Only then did we find the thunder vein hidden in the mountain. Using the thunderstones in the thunder veins as materials, no matter what they are extremely strong and can be used for a long time. Therefore, we have solved a life problem, but this kind of toughness has a certain range. Only around the original stones, these thunderstones can have such effects. Many people have proposed to take these thunderstones out and sell them to maintain our livelihood, but only the original stones cannot be thought of. This stone is the guarantee for our survival. Hearing this, Shenyi finally realized that the reason why the armor soldier's armor lost its strong defense ability was because it was beyond the distance of the original stone. But what is this original stone? As if aware of Shenyi's doubts, Meng's waved his hands to Tian Tan to indicate that he couldn't explain it now, but he could understand why. After thinking about it, how could the bandits leave such an important thing where it was and ignore it? Normal people would definitely hide the original stone very well. That's why you didn't want to find the ninja to take back the original stone until the traitor snatched it from you. Orochimaru shrugged. In his eyes, Missions are always just missions, and he is completely uninterested in topics other than missions. Regardless of Kamiya's question, he walked out of the room alone, claiming to go outside to get some fresh air. Yes, this place is a paradise for the outside world. I can find such a peaceful place during the war years. I don't want to go back to the days of hiding in Tibet. The deep fear in the eyes can't lie. Shenyi watched every move of Meng's Mushin, even every look, and almost opened the Sharingan again. But what the old man in front of him said was all from the heart, without any falsehood, and this also moved the claws beside him to tears. Don't worry, Mr. Xiangtian, we will definitely give you a safe place to live. Even if it's, what are you doing on a day trip? Rizai, who was quietly listening to the lecture before the claw finished speaking, poked the deeply sympathetic claw in private. After all, once this kind of promise was made, it was part of the mission. The mission that could have been easily ended undoubtedly added a lot of difficulty. Besides, among the people present, only Shenye and Rizai had dealt with those armored troops, and they knew how difficult it was to deal with that army. But have you ever thought that even if we repel these bandits, this place will become the same paradise as before? Rizai also knew that his behavior was a bit disrespectful, but the old man in front of him obviously thought the world too simply. Even if Konoha and his party solve this bandit, this place has already been exposed. Let's not talk about the weapon dealers that the bandits may collude with, let's talk about the fleeing and rebellious Ren who has never shown up. But such a result is a bit too cruel. Everyone knows this in their hearts, but no one wants to tell the cruel fact to the hopeful old man. I know what you guys mean. I've lived a long time and I don't have anything to miss. It's a pity that my granddaughter is only in her early 20s this year and has never been out in this small country of grass. It really hurts my heart to let her suffer this crime with us. Although the three subordinates feel extremely sympathetic to Bibi, it is impossible for them to change anything with their own strength. Everyone understands this, and Shenyi is even more aware of the terrifying strength needed to change something. Thinking back to the future, Pain, Jiraiya, Naruto, Nagato, these people are all trying to pursue the road of world peace, but in the end, no one has achieved peace in the true sense of the ninja world, but now there is really no way. Shenyi felt very uncomfortable. This stubborn old man did nothing wrong, his home was occupied, he just wanted to have a place where he could live and work in peace and contentment without being affected by the war, but such a wish was too extravagant in the ninja world. What are the characteristics of the rough stone? We will try our best to help you find the rough stone. After this time is over, you can take the rough stone and some thunderstones and change your residence. This is the biggest favor we can do for you. Otherwise, it will be difficult to handle when the traitor comes. As Shenyi said, the snot-nosed paw moved by the side nodded vigorously to express his approval, although Nisai frowned, he did not express any objection. Then it's settled. Tomorrow morning we'll go and deal with the bandits, and we'll come back and transfer you as soon as we're done. Shenyi didn't know if he was helping Meng Zimushin by doing this, although it was a bit cruel to force them to move, but there was no other way. Compared with Meng's, Xiangtian also understands, but still wants to say something, but unfortunately the corner of the opened mouth just smashed and closed again. Although he is not satisfied with this method, there is no more reasonable way than this at the moment, so he nodded in desperation. Shenyi, do you have any plans for your plan? After sending Meng's Xiangtian back to the room, Zhao and Risashi surrounded Shenye. Since Shenye promised Meng's Xiangtian, there must be some way. But to the disappointment of the two, Shenyi gently pushed them away and shook his head, indicating that he also had no clue. After leaving the two of them, Shenyi came to the outskirts of the village alone. The endless stretch of mountains concealed this small village. I have to say that this place is indeed a good place that is hard to find. If it weren't for those bandits, people here should still be living a carefree life. Shenya's heart is infinitely empty. He just wants to enjoy the tranquility of the moment. At a loss for what to do with tomorrow's plan, Shenye gradually regrets what he said just now. In this world he is always just a passerby, the lives of these people are like books he has read before, and maybe he will not take a second look after reading it. But Shenye also knew that if he had to choose once, he would still choose to help Meng's Xiangtian, because the beauty of the book is that when you read the book, you will concentrate on the content of the book and experience the feelings of the people in the book, just like you are helping Meng's Xiangtian now. Just when Shenyi was feeling infinitely emotional, from the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught a glimpse of Orochimaru, who was not far from the village gate just now, who appeared not far from him at some point. Is this the strength of Sannin, such a long distance so fast and without sound? Sannin is just a title given by others. For me, I prefer my own name. Since you have nothing to do, why did you agree to it? Orochimaru seems to be really asking this question with all his heart, and the atmosphere of the whole person is no longer that kind of gloomy, but an exploration of puzzlement. Shen Yi was also taken aback by this change in temperament, never expecting that Orochimaru would humbly ask him for advice. I just want to do my best to make the world a better place. Maybe my efforts are insignificant, but if peace really comes one day in the future, I can proudly say that this peace also has my part. Shen Yi had no such intentions in his heart. As he lived in a peaceful era with sound laws, he never thought of a life like this. He used to think that his life was too boring. It would be great if one day he could be as enthusiastic as the ninja world. And Orochimaru also rarely expressed understanding of Shen Yi's speech, but it was one thing to understand it, and another to agree with it. You are very similar to a friend of mine, but true peace does not come from a village living in peace and contentment. Who knows how far the road to peace is? Shen Yi even doubted his own ears. There was obviously a feeling in Orochimaru's words just now that he wanted to use it but was powerless. Shen Yi didn't know what Orochimaru was thinking in his heart, but his disgust for Orochimaru from the bottom of his heart disappeared at this moment. Perhaps this is also a person full of twists and turns in his heart. This is an emergency call letter. If there is anything you can't deal with, just tear it open. There is only one chance to open it at the most critical time. A blood-red envelope appeared in the hands of Orochimaru, which was a new thing that had never been seen before, but Shen Yi didn't feel any surprise that this kind of thing came from the hands of Orochimaru. At this moment, Orochimaru is so people want to rely on, but understanding Orochimaru does not mean that Shen Yi let go of his guard against him. What is the function of this strange thing? Orochimaru also saw Shen Yi's entanglement, but he didn't say much. He just put the envelope on the stone table between the two of them, then turned and left. It wasn't until Orochimaru left for a while that Shen Yi relaxed the tense muscles all over his body, and stared at the blood-red envelope tightly with his eyes, feeling an indescribable weirdness in his heart. It's just that in the end, Shen Yi somehow hid the envelope. For some reason, he just felt that Orochimaru didn't harm him this time. Besides, even if the distress letter has been delivered now, it will take 2 days at the earliest for people from Konoha to come. Let alone 2 days when they meet the armored troops, even 2 minutes may kill everyone. The silent night was like the tranquility before the storm. At this moment, outside the enchantment in a place unknown to everyone, a search team of dozens of people was probing back and forth in the deep mountains, apparently already guessing where the person who did the action came from. It's a pity that although the awareness of this group of people is already in place, they are still almost meaningless in terms of strength. Orochimaru's enchantment technique completely threw these people outside the enchantment. Even if a few people brushed past the village, they didn't realize it. Time flies, the morning sun shines on the faces of several people, reflecting the determination of everyone is extremely firm, and Shen Yi's dark circles also prove that he has studied all night to study the method of dealing with armored soldiers, but it is true that they will not be known until they really match each other. Mr. Orochimaru, aren't you going? Meng Xiangtian expressed his doubts to Orochimaru, who was still lying on the bed leisurely. After all, the main combat force of this mission is Orochimaru, but now the main combat force is lying on the bed as if preparing to sleep again, but how many juniors want to return to the front line alone? Ah, we've already discussed it. My task is to stay here to protect you. They're just going to steal some stones. If that doesn't work, you're still a Konoha ninja. Faced with Orochimaru's casual answer, Yumezawa Mukata wanted to say something, but was stopped by Kamiya on the side. He and the other two were prepared for Orochimaru's refusal to go. He had already considered it when he made his plan yesterday, and this is a good time. If it is later, he will miss it. Okay then, I wish you all the best of luck. Shen Yi, who took the lead, directly tore off the talisman paper at the gate of the village. From now on, they were no longer protected by the barrier. The action has officially begun. Accompanied by the morning sun, the three of them were as mighty as generals on an expedition. Their silhouettes moving through the jungle were like cheetahs pouncing on the grassland. Whenever they saw a single armored warrior, they went straight up to 3-on-1, and eliminated the enemy before they could react. In fact, after a night of analysis, Shenye didn't find any coups, but only found some problems with his and Riza's attack methods. The obvious armor of the armored soldiers is where their defense is the most powerful, but last time Shenye and Rizai punched the thick armor, and the natural damage was absorbed by the armor. And this time, Shenye and the others are also smart. Every time they deal with the soldiers who are alone, they launch a surprise attack from behind, throwing kunai or shuriken through the gaps in the armor before they react, so as to maximize the damage. But to the surprise of the others, this group of bandits didn't know the reason, and each one of them looked like they were not awake. Even patrolling in teams would sneak away, which made a few people cheaper. In just a few minutes, no less than bandits died under the assassin's hands. I will remember my arrangement later. The day messenger and I will go into search, and the claws will expand the sensitivity of the sense of smell to search for the enemy. Once there are groups of enemies, don't hesitate to retreat. We will use the teleportation technique to return to you. Shenyi heavily entrusted the specially made kunai to Claw's hands. This entrusted not only the lives of the two, but also the future of the dozen or so rescued hostages in the village. Not long after, the bandits patrolling around the village were almost cleaned up by the three of them. After making sure the surroundings were safe, Shenyi put his hands on the shoulders of the two of them, and with a whoosh, the three of them arrived at the enemy's base camp in an instant. This is the large villa where Shenye followed the rescuer last time. At this moment, the villa seems to have entered a state of complete North Station. There are even several guards on the outermost wall. It's a pity that the guards of ordinary people are a bit too weak for ninjas. Randomly finding a sparsely guarded position, the three of them flew directly onto the wall, and before the soldier on the wall could make a warning sound, they were already passed out with a slap on the throat by Zhuanbei's slap. After hiding the guard's body, several people turned over from the wall and rushed towards the innermost moment after falling to the ground. None of the people had been here before. Although they were unfamiliar with the cottages, they should all be about the same size. All you need to do is make a reasonable guess as to where the bandits would hide their valuables. The innermost building in the village looked similar to Hokage's office. Shenyi nodded towards the other two. Obviously this should be where the original stone was. It's just that after climbing over the outermost wall, the whole cottage was quiet, without the hustle and bustle of voices that a base with hundreds of people should have. Only a few steps away, you can see a few figures of men or women locked up in cages, but his hands and feet are also bound, like pets waiting to be sold. However, what made Shenyi most unacceptable was not the indifference of these people after seeing the three of them, but the despair that turned back after a flash of hope and then noticing the forehead protection of a few people. But it's okay, if these people beg Shenyi for help in the cage at this time, they will definitely expose themselves. Shenyi persuaded himself like this. It's just that the three of them felt something was wrong as they went in, and there was no one in Nuoda's base. This kind of overly simple task made people wonder if they had fallen into a trap. Day difference, are there any enemies around? In fact, even if he hadn't received Shenya's words, he would have already opened his eyes, but most of the surrounding buildings were made of thunderstones, and the chakra-transmitting nature of them limited his eyes, so that no one has been found so far, and Shenya's chakra detection is almost the same, which makes the weird atmosphere a little more gloomy. Maybe there is a large group of armored soldiers waiting for the three of them in a corner. There are people approaching, and there are a lot of them. As the three of them advanced, it was not Nazashi or Kamiya who first discovered the problem, but Inuzuka Cho, Inu Kuromaru. It has been surrounded. It seems that we have some understanding of our abilities. Otherwise, it would be impossible to use this kind of thing to invalidate your ninjutsu against the abilities of the two of you. The sound of rustling has already sounded from the surroundings. Even if Shenyi does not have the sensitive sense of smell and hearing like Kuromaru, he can still find the enemy who is getting closer. This mission can be said to be a complete failure, and Shenyi didn't miss it at all, and directly dragged the two of them to use the Flying Thunder God technique, but the Flying Thunder God failed and happened here again. What's going on? Hurry up and fly away according to the plan. It is difficult to judge the number of people on the other side from the sound of footsteps getting closer, but one thing is certain is that the number is definitely more than 300. It should be restricted like your white eyes. This news was like destroying heaven and earth to everyone. It would be meaningless if they could not escape from the encirclement of these people, but the footsteps got closer and closer until figures came from all directions and surrounded everyone. I really didn't expect you to have such courage. Could it be that you are here to destroy us? The armor of the armored warrior in the lead was slightly different from the others, and looked more formidable. A burst of ridicule came from the mouth of the lead, followed by a burst of echoing laughter. What should I do? Claw asked, a little at a loss. Faced with this situation, even Shen Yi lost his mind. All the plans he had made were disrupted at this moment. It can be said that all his efforts last night were in vain. The most terrible thing is that this group of people will definitely not let the three of them go. Break through towards the front, you can only go one by one with all your strength. Shen Yi has already made up his mind to work hard here. Flying Thunder God is restricted for some reason, which is equivalent to making the surrounded people lose the advantage of absolute safety. The two specially made kunai are tightly held in their hands, and now they can only do their best. But the luck in the misfortune is that although the Flying Thunder God cannot be used at a long distance, it can still be used at a short distance, and this has become the only way for the three to escape for their lives many times. How about it? How many times can it be used? No, chakra is about to run out, and we are teleporting 3 or 2 times at most. Riza obviously noticed that Shen Yi's face was turning pale. Using this powerful ninjutsu multiple times in a short period of time consumed a huge amount of chakra. However, the direction of the wall was still too far away from the three of them, and twice was not enough. Shen Yi, take your claws away first, and go to Teacher Orochimaru. I have a little more chakra left, and I can hold on to resist this group of people for a while. Hurry up, Teacher Orochimaru, bring it back to me. Knowing that it is impossible for everyone to escape, Nisashi directly made a decision. He has the consciousness of being Hinata and the consciousness of sacrificing himself for his companions. At a critical moment, who knows that staying is only a dead end, and even if caught by the enemy, it would be better to die generously. Even so, Riza still resolutely said this sentence, let me be the last one. I don't know why the corners of Shenya's eyes are moist. Obviously these people are just passers-by in his life. Why is this so? You must know that watching anime is completely different from experiencing it yourself. Only when you experience this kind of fearless self-sacrifice can you really feel it. I won't let anyone be abandoned. I still have a way to believe me. Shen Yi said while throwing a specially made kunai out of the encirclement, and moved further towards the gate. The art of Flying Thunder God. Putting his hands on the shoulders of the other two, another Flying Thunder God technique was used. Now Shen Yi was a little dizzy, and this feeling was a sign of chakra overdraft. But the drowsy Shen Yi did not just faint, but before the armored soldiers behind him could react, he threw his special kunai towards the gate again. Since there are no extra obstacles on the road this time, the kunai this time is farther than the previous kunai, so the teleportation distance is also a bit farther, but unfortunately it is only a little bit, and the current situation of life and death will not be any better. It seems that I fell here this time. It's all my fault that my plan is not strong enough. I'm sorry that I have troubled you too. Shen Yi, who was used by Flying Thunder God for the last time, has been seriously exhausted. He has no chakra left for him to use, and even the last strength is running out. What are you talking about? The enemy is too cunning, and we didn't call Mr. Oshimaru, otherwise this group of minions would be nothing but a matter of time to Mr. Oshimaru. Speaking of Orochimaru, Shen Yi put his hand into his ninja bag, and he took out a blood-red envelope, which was obviously the one that Orochimaru gave him before. At this moment, Shenya was at the end of his battle, and it was obviously the emergency moment that Orochimaru said, but he didn't know how much he could believe in Orochimaru Kamiya. Inuzuka Zuo and Hinata carried Kamiya to a place against the wall and sat down, and the two of them stood back in front of the enemy. A steady stream of armored soldiers surrounded them from all directions, obviously intending to catch everyone in one go. Day difference, you can help me delay for a while. If you can't hold on, then withdraw towards me. I still have one move to defeat the enemy, but it takes a little time to save chakra. At this moment, Shen Yi had already made up his mind to block the lives of the three of them on this letter from Orochimaru. It is good, the two replied in unison, and then they dodged and ran towards the enemy. Oshimaru, I hope you don't let me down. With the last bit of strength in his body, Shen Yi tore open the blood-red envelope, but to his disappointment, only a thin blood-red mist appeared from the envelope, but it disappeared in an instant, and nothing happened after that. What is this situation? With a confused face, Shen Yi looked at the envelope in his hand that had been cut into two halves. Nothing different happened at all. He thought it should be an extremely powerful ninjutsu, or some kind of powerful psychic beast, but he never expected that Orochimaru only put a little red smoke in it, and it had no effect at all. Orochimaru isn't thinking about mocking me at the moment of the extract. There was great grief in his heart, but Shen Yi couldn't help but feel infinite sadness in his heart when he saw the two teammates who were not retreating in the face of hundreds of people. Could it be over here? No, even though his heart was full of grief and anger, facing such a situation, Shen Yi didn't have the confidence to let all three of them survive. Give it a go. Immortal energy began to gather in the body, constantly sensing the power of heaven and earth. Shen Yi felt a little bit like he had mastered the basics of immortality, but it was not the time to study it carefully. He just absorbed the energy quickly. About 2 minutes passed, and Shen Yi hadn't absorbed enough energy. Hinata and Inuzuka Chao were repulsed back one after another, and both of them had shocking wounds on their bodies, obviously unable to fight anymore. I'm sorry I couldn't buy you more time. The day's difference was a little bit better. He just spit out a mouthful of blood when he was beaten back, and he wanted to get up to fight again but was stopped by Shen Yi, and the claw was also in a state of embarrassment when he was knocked away from Shen Yi's side and slapped on the wall and passed out. Leave the rest to me. Shen Yi didn't have 100% confidence in this move, but now she couldn't rely on anyone but herself. Standing up tremblingly, Shen Yi turned a deaf ear to the bandits who unscrupulously laughed at the three of them, making handprints one by one. Smelly brat, we hurt a lot of brothers because of you guys. How do you think we should compensate you? I think you've been turned into human beings, and that woman is still a bit pretty. Why don't you let our brothers have fun? Ha ha ha. Rizai on the side gritted his teeth angrily, but he didn't even have the strength to stand up, so he could only stare blankly to express the anger in his heart. Wind escape, vacuum wave. It has to be said that the ninjutsu learned from the killer sent by Orochimaru is indeed able to face the big scene, and it is the best ninjutsu for Shen Yi now. The violent hurricane hit from Shen Yi's mouth, and the violent energy directly blew away all the enemies in front of him. Even the seemingly solid houses were scattered away, except for those houses made of glowing thunderstones, which were intact. But in the face of this group of armored soldiers, even the wind escape with the addition of fairy art can't hurt them in the slightest, but the huge power blows many armored soldiers into the air. Seeing that the situation was not good, Shen Yi also turned to the back and released, trying to blow away the houses and walls, and then he could escape. Unfortunately, although the house behind him fell down, a burst of light appeared from the wall not far from them, showing his identity. This fence is actually made of thunderstones. This time Shen Yi is also completely desperate. The power of Feng Dan is getting weaker and weaker, and it is the chakra that has just gathered in the body that has almost been consumed. Looks like God is going to kill me. As the last breeze blew, Shen Yi sat on the ground slumped. The cautious enemy army had arrived in front of him, but he couldn't even lift his arms. You did a great job, Shen Yi. Chapter 91. A familiar voice came from behind the three of Shen Yi. Even Shen Yi was very surprised at this moment. Looking back, it was Orochimaru who appeared as a savior. Although he had won reluctances towards him in his heart, Shen Yi had to admit that the appearance of Orochimaru now really made him breathe a sigh of relief. Mr. Oshimaru, when did you come? Unlike Shen Yi's astonishment, Nasasa's face was full of infinite admiration. Obviously he regarded Orochimaru as a god. For this, Orochimaru just smiled mysteriously at Shen Yi. Obviously it was the credit of the blood-red envelope. Now that I think about it, it should be a kind of reverberation psychic or a message to let Orochimaru know that the situation here is critical. HMPH, so what if there is another one? Your ninja's ninjutsu is ineffective against Lei Shi. This has been verified by many people before. One more is just another one to die. The leader on the opposite side was obviously blinded by his almost complete victory record, thinking that even if there was another person, he would be able to beat the same. Really, come on, brothers, let this yin and yang man who is neither male nor female see how powerful we are. Said Shen Yi's face twitched for a while, but Orochimaru's face was very exciting. Look, JNIN battles are rare, Shen Yi said to the day difference and the claw that just woke up, and also reminded himself that this is his goal in the future. Facing the cold-eyed ridicule on the other side, Orochimaru was obviously really angry, and bit his finger directly. Blood flowed from the finger, and then wiped the blood on his hand and started to seal. Although no one knows what this seal is, there is only one ninjutsu that requires blood. The art of psychic, triple Rashomon. With the sound of Orochimaru, a huge amount of smoke came out in front of the four people, and then three giant gates with terrifying ghost faces appeared in front of the four people, like three terrifying demon gods. The armored soldiers were obviously stunned by the battle. What they saw before was nothing but small fights. They had never seen a ninja with such strength. They only regretted it when they saw the huge iron gate. Unfortunately, it was too late. The three big gates surrounded these armored soldiers in a triangular shape, leaving them nowhere to hide, let alone escape. Trapping everyone, Orochimaru also had a frightening cold smile on his face, and then jumped directly onto the Rashomon closest to them. The three of Shenye also wanted to go up to see the demeanor of Orochimaru, but it is a pity that let alone jumping up, it is a bit difficult to even stand up, so they can only watch Orochimaru standing on the door release ninjutsu from a distance. Wind done, a big breakthrough. Orochimaru, who jumped to the highest point, was not in a hurry, and started pouring fire at the people below like a cat holding a mouse. Although Thunderstone has a certain counteracting effect on ninjutsu, if it is faced with too powerful ninjutsu, it will also be hurt. No one knows this, and only realized it after Orochimaru released the terrifying wind escape. It seems that the strength gap is still too big. Unlike the other two stunned men, Shenyi was not only surprised by Orochimaru's strength, but also felt a deep desire for this power. The big breakthrough released by Orochimaru was only AC level ninjutsu, but the effect was not much different from A level ninjutsu. One can imagine how terrifying Orochimaru's strength is. But what Kamiya admires the most is Orochimaru's terrifying combat IQ. After using Rashomon to control everyone, it is not just aimless ninjutsu. Even if Feng Dun's powerful power could not directly cause harm to everyone, the strong wind force was enough to blow everyone away, and then landed heavily on the Rashomon, which was the farthest away from them. This was the best way to deal with heavy armored soldiers. Sure enough, after Orochimaru released Feng Dun, they were blown directly to the door, and then fell heavily to the ground, making these people lose their ability to fight. Is this the strength of Sannin? It's simply too terrifying. The claws on the side made a sound of envy, and Shenyi couldn't help but look back at her pitifully. In Kamiya's mind, the skills that he least wants to steal are the skills of the Inuzuka family. There are many fighting methods in the ninja world, but the fighting methods of the Inuzuka family are not only single, but also have many restrictions. What's more, without the company of Ninja Dog, Kamiya couldn't exert the Inuzuka family's not-so-high combat effectiveness at all, so that Kamiya didn't have the idea of stealing her skills at all during such a long time together, and even warned the system not to steal skills when touching the claws, which is really useless. There was a feeling of helplessness in my heart, but Shenyi didn't show it. She just smiled and said, "One day in the future, we will all have such strength." That's fine. Claw's words were obviously full of endless loneliness, but fortunately, Haiwen came over in time and licked her hand to signal not to be sad, and Claw touched Haiwen's head and smiled in relief. Don't worry, although your fighting methods are different, in the future you will all be very ninja. Kamiya is very sure about this matter. After all, in Naruto's era, these people have become elite jonin for a long time. I just told them the future. Believe it or not, they have the final say. Thank you God Knight. With Shenyi's comfort, Claw looked much better, and continued to watch the battle of Orochimaru above the door. Kung Fu Orochimaru had already used several ninjutsu while speaking, and now the field was extremely chaotic, with countless snakes approaching the soldiers little by little. And although those armored soldiers had some courage to go up and chop a few snakes, it's a pity that even if the huge number didn't move, it would take a while for them to forcefully chop them. Not long after, screams rang out from the middle of the three doors that few people could not see. At first, there were only a few yells, but they gradually became louder and louder, and then gradually subsided. Obviously, no one could breathe. This group of armored soldiers who had caused the three of Shenye to be overwhelmed was wiped out within 5 minutes under Orochimaru's terrifying ninjutsu, and none of them could even escape. With a bang, the three gates once again turned into the white mist that appeared when they appeared, and disappeared, while the little snake spread out and crawled towards all the surrounding rooms. Are you three okay? Orochimaru, who had dealt with the enemy, walked to the front of the three with a relaxed face and asked expressionlessly. It didn't look like an urgent concern, but rather a business inquiry. It's nothing. Fortunately, you showed up in time, and it won't be necessarily later. That's safe and sound. Orochimaru didn't seem to realize that there was something in Shenyi's words, so he directly decided that the three of them were safe, even though the injuries on the three of them were not serious. Since there's nothing else to do, go back. The task is almost done. It's time to return. As soon as Orochimaru appeared, he showed an attitude of wanting to end it early. Obviously he didn't want to take over this troublesome matter anymore. But the original has not yet been found, and some people in the village have not been rescued. After they are rescued, where should we place them? Are these things unresolved? You were hired by them to do this kind of thing. Facing the words of the clause, Orochimaru didn't even look at it, wondering if years of war had given him the habit of not caring about his own business, but according to the entrustment and task, he had indeed overfulfilled. For Orochimaru's question, Claw hesitated and shook her head. She also knew that as a ninja, she couldn't bring personal emotions into the mission, but she couldn't help but want to help the homeless people. In this case, anyone who wants to help those people can go, and those who don't want to go back with me. Still without any emotion in his tone, Orochimaru seems to be born as an emotionless machine, only showing other emotions when he is interested in something that interests him. Claw also lost his mind about this, and subconsciously looked at Shenyi who was resting. Shenyi also noticed the puzzled eyes of the claws, and the day difference also turned his head around, obviously wanting to hear his opinion, but he did not expect that he would become the leader of the three in just a few days of tasks. But Shenyi didn't want to get in touch with Dashawan much, who knew what this man was thinking at ordinary times. It was really puzzling that he sent someone to chase and kill him yesterday and came here to rescue him today. Then let's find the original stone first, and leave the rest to our own people. Shenyi asked the two of them in an uncertain tone. In fact, he was observing the actions of Orochimaru secretly, but he was relieved when he found that nothing happened. The short rest just now has allowed Shenyi to recover some chakra. As long as he is not facing a large number of soldiers, there will be no problem, even if there is no Orochimaru. I would like to follow you. Seeming to be affirmed by others, Claw couldn't wait to express his attitude, and Rizai also stood up after thinking for a moment and said that he would also join. Now three of the four joined in. Shenyi turned to look at Orochimaru, not knowing what to expect, and the latter just nodded and didn't indicate that he wanted to go together. Just now my group of snakes reported the location of my rough stone. It's in the room at the front and turning left in that direction, but there are still a few warriors in armor inside. I won't help you in the next battle. You must take responsibility for your choices and actions from the day you graduate from the ninja school. After finishing speaking, Orochimaru left without looking back, which really made Shenyi a little confused, but since Orochimaru provided the direction, it saved a few people the time to explore. There are only a few. When the time comes, I will go in and lure people out. At that time, the claws and the sun will kill them with one blow. Remember to use ninjutsu with impact, otherwise the damage to those armored soldiers will be minimal. The two also nodded fiercely. Obviously, the battle of Orochimaru just now made them understand how to deal with armored soldiers. Following the direction that Orochimaru pointed, the three of them didn't waste much time along the way, and came directly to this room, but only Shenyi was very puzzled by what Orochimaru did, but he believed that there must be a reason for Orochimaru to do this, but he didn't know it yet. Just in case, when Shenyi reached the end of the road, he used a chakra probe to confirm whether what Orochimaru said was true, but what Orochimaru said was true. There were several people in that room, and there was a special chakra aggregate, which should be the original stone. Remember what I just said, you must use ninjutsu with impact. The two nodded, and Shenyi also left a handful of specially made kunai at the door so that he could escape directly. The positions of several people have been remembered by Shenyi. Taking a deep breath, Shenyi directly pushed the door in, and before the physical robot could react, he directly knocked one of them down with a move of the hidden shadow snake hand. After a moment's reaction, the remaining four people directly stepped forward to cut Shenyi under the knife, but unfortunately, no matter how fast they seemed to move, they couldn't do anything to fly the god of thunder. Immediately activating the Flying Thunder God technique, Shenyi's body was teleported outside the house in an instant. So far, all the plans have been carried out perfectly, but the next thing is unexpected. The two who were preparing for a sneak attack behind the room were already ready to go, but the enemy in the room refused to come out for a long time, which made the two of them stiffen their posture. What's the matter, Shenyi? They didn't come after you. Shenyi was also at a loss about this, but he just thought about the purpose of his trip and understood why. Compared with the original stone in the room, which was ordered to be protected by death, the armored warriors in front of them are obviously not comparable to those outside. Both in terms of reaction speed and combat ability, they are much better than those just now. If it wasn't for Shenyi who went into sneak attack just now, even one of them would not be solved, but now another problem has arisen. The people in the room couldn't come out, and the narrow terrain was more beneficial for several armored warriors with sharp long knives, and because the room was made of thunderstone, it was basically impossible to destroy it from the outside, so Shenyi and the three stood outside and couldn't think of a good way. Using water escape ninjutsu to force those people out. Do you know, Claw's proposal was a good one, but Rizai's response directly broke the idea. Risashi and Claw are both taijutsu ninjas, and the skill Shenyi stole does not include water escape, so the three of them are all dumbfounded. I don't know if illusion can work. In Shenyi's mind, he suddenly remembered the illusion that he had stolen from Aoba Yamashiro when he was investigated by Jiraiya, 3000 Crows. Shenyi, do you know illusion? I thought we were placed in the same group because we are both good at physical arts. The shock of the claws cannot be increased, and the same is true for the day difference, but if they know the truth, they must be even more shocked, but it is impossible for Shenyi to let them know. Follow Sanin, you have to look good. After finishing speaking, Shenyi didn't care about the two of them, and went back into the house to face the remaining 4 people again. Boy, you dare to come back. Eat me. The few people in the room were indeed waiting for Shenyi to come back, and directly blocked the two sides of the door, and when they saw Shenyi coming in, they immediately attacked. Ninja technique, the technique of 3000 Crows. Shenyi, who was ready, released ninjutsu instantly, and the sharp blades of the 4 of them also slashed at the corner of Shenyi's clothes. The 4 ninjas who were trapped by the illusion waved wildly at the air in front of Shenyi, and cut down their own people without much effort, and there was no one in the room who could stand up again except Shenyi without any effort. Seeing this situation, Shenyi also stopped the illusion, and went out to call the two of them in, but just as Shenyi was about to step out of the door, there was a burst of urgent killing intent behind him. Before he had time to react, Shenyi almost subconsciously charged forward. This charge not only allowed him to avoid the fatal blow, but also rushed out of the room directly. What's going on? The illusion didn't get rid of those people. Seeing Shenyi falling out in embarrassment, Rizai went up to inquire directly, but after seeing the long and narrow knife wound on Shenyi's back, he looked directly into the room. Unfortunately, for some reason, the swift figure just disappeared, as if he had never appeared before. Just when Rizai was about to enter the door to investigate, Shenyi, who was lying on the ground, exclaimed, "Don't go in. It's a pity that it's too late." Nizai's foot has already stepped into the gate, and then Nizai also felt the deadly killing intent, and Nizai released the chakra that had been prepared almost instantly after entering the door. Back to the days. The rapid rotation and the released chakra bounced the terrifying blade away, but only the remaining power directly bounced Hyuga Hideki out, farther than the god Yefe. What's the situation? Facing such a powerful enemy, Inuzuka Cho was stunned. As soon as he put Kamiya's arm on his shoulder, Nishiza flew in front of him. All this happened in an instant, without giving anyone a chance to react. After a brief moment of shock, the claws directly picked up Shenyi and directed Kuromaru to pick up the day difference and run away. It has to be said that Claw's judgment is very correct. The armored soldiers don't know why they don't chase out of the house, and the tragic situation of the two Shenyi is obviously no match, let alone her who is obviously weaker than the two, so retreating is the most correct decision at this moment. It's a pity that it is completely correct if they are facing those armored soldiers, but what they are facing now is not the soldiers who have been dealt with by Shenyi. A figure came out of the small room, holding a glowing lightning stone in one hand, and dragging a bland or even dilapidated samurai sword on the ground with the other hand. The mask on his face made it impossible to see the face of this person, and the pure black hat made it impossible to tell what country he was from. The moment this person appeared, he gave the claw a mysterious and powerful feeling. Is this the original stone? It doesn't look strange. As if talking to himself, the figure played with the stone in his hand for a while, but after playing with it for a while, he put it in his pocket casually, and turned his gaze to the claw that was about to sneak away with the two of them. Are you Konoha's ninjas? Or are all Konoha's ninjas weak like this? There is obvious helplessness in it, but there is also a lot of ridicule. Who are you? Carrying the claws of the two of them, knowing that they could not escape this man's pursuit, they simply put down Shenyi to prepare for the fight, and Kuromaru also put down the day's difference, and bared his teeth at the masked man. Hey, little sister, don't be afraid, uncle, I'm not a good person. No, a bad person. Faced with the claw turning around and wanting to go all out, the masked man obviously didn't care. With the support of his powerful strength, he had every reason to be so crazy. Actually, at first I just wanted to take this thing called the original stone, but now I suddenly became interested and wanted to kill some little ghosts for fun. No need to look at his face under the mask to know that this person must be even more perverted than he sounds. Claw, who wanted to fight back, suddenly felt the trembling of Kuromaru's feet, and without knowing why, he quietly lowered his head to take a look, only to see that Kuromaru's eyes were full of fear. Obviously he was very afraid of the strength of the man in front of him. This had to make Naruto re-evaluate the man in front of him. Others were not familiar with Kuromaru, but as Naruto who grew up with Kuromaru, he knew that Kuromaru was somewhat belligerent and eager for those powerful opponents. So far, he had never shown such a desperate look. Yo-yo, look quickly, the puppy is scared, it's okay, after a while, you won't feel the fear under the underworld. The friendly tone sounded like he was comforting an injured child to eat candy and not cry. The masked man's voice was very gentle, but the more so, the more terrifying the words that came out of his mouth. The next moment, the masked man directly blocked the katana in his hand. At this moment, the claws hadn't realized why, but the next second, the figure of Shenyi appeared behind the masked man, and the kunai in his hand was pointing in the direction where the masked man raised his hand and swung the knife. Have you been found? After the sneak attack failed, Shenyi didn't stay any longer, and used Flying Thunder God to return to the claw. What time are you? Claw looked at Shenyi who had returned to his side with a look of surprise. Obviously just now, he was looking at the place where Shenyi was lying just now. A little wooden man was lying there quietly. Little ghost, you really don't take me seriously if you want to use such a simple substitute technique to deceive me, but you can use space ninjutsu at such a young age. It's really a bit powerful. Are you a descendant of the second generation? The masked man obviously knew a lot about Konoha's affairs, and he opened his mouth to talk about the history of Konoha, but it's a pity that his guesses were all wrong. Stop talking nonsense. I give you two choices, either turn around and leave, or leave your life here. Compared with the fear of Claw and Kuromaru, Shenyi seemed much calmer, but facing the powerful enemy in front of him, Shenyi did not relax at all. After all, he almost died when he relaxed just now. Hey, it's really scary, little ghost of Konoha, so should I say save my life? Although the tone is questionable, his words have already expressed his meaning. Since you don't want it, then save your life. After casting a wink at the claw, Shenyi slammed directly in the direction of the masked man, constantly changing the seals in his hands, and all the chakra on his body was condensed in the chest cavity. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. A small fireball was released from Shenyi's mouth, rushing towards the masked man with a terrifying temperature. Oh, interesting. Facing the oncoming big fireball, the masked man didn't dodge or dodge, just facing Shenyi's big fireball. This operation really stunned Shenyi. How could it be solved so easily? But the reality gave Shenyi a blow. It's really hot, but it's just so-so. It's fine to cook a meal and light a fire at my house. The flames dissipated, but the face in front of him was still firm, and his hands kept shaking. It was obvious that he used his bare hands to force the next blow of the fireball just now. There is such a defensive power. Shenyi sighed secretly in his heart, but he didn't show it. He just threw his special kunai around in all directions and bullied him. Claw, help me back up. Facing the powerful enemy in front of him, Shenyi knows that only teamwork can solve it, and now his fighting style has always been flexible and changeable, and the claws in Kuromaru's teeth can make up for the fatal blow. If they cooperate well, they can definitely deal with the strong enemy. It is good. The claws behind Shen Yi comforted Heiwan, who was getting better, then threw a red pill into Heiwan's mouth and encouraged him, just be the same as usual, Heiwan, get ready. Heiwan, who was encouraged, also regained his strength. Under the action of the pill, his whole body began to grow bigger, until it stopped when he was almost as tall as a person. Beast imitation ninja. Beast clone technique. Immediately afterwards, a white mist appeared, and both Claw and Kuromaru turned into a bloodthirsty werewolf. Shen Yi, who was shuttling back and forth between the kunai, smiled with relief at this scene. Just now, the Claws seemed to have lost the will to fight, which is definitely very dangerous in battle, so Shen Yi called him to assist him. HMPH, what's the use of adding up 2 brats, they are all slaughtered cattle and sheep in front of my uncle. With both hands waving the samurai sword, as soon as Kamiya wanted to go forward, he was targeted by a powerful force. This kind of terrifying power was comparable to that of Tsunade, but he had never seen Tsunade seriously exerting great strength, so Kamiya could only compare it roughly. During the period of thinking, Shen Yi was forced to jump position again by the masked man, ready to launch a surprise attack behind the masked man, but this time the masked man seemed to have mastered Shen Yi's rules and rushed towards Shen Yi after using Flying Thunder God. Compared with Shen Yi, he was also shocked. It was too late to use Flying Thunder God in short-distance combat, and he could only resist with force. Clutching the kunai in his hand tightly, Shen Yi waited for the next impact, but suddenly there was a roar of violent vibration in his ears. Tooth and teeth. 2 rapidly spinning brown figures came from behind the masked man, and the masked face, who also felt the power, did not dare to stretch his face at this time, so he could only stop attacking Shen Yi and turn around to face the 2 spinning figures with all his strength. It's just that the masked man let Shen Yi go, but Shen Yi didn't mean to let the masked man go. Looking at the enemy with his back turned, Shen Yi turned from defense to offense without saying a word, and stabbed him with kunai. The masked man who was attacked from the back had no choice but to choose the method that would cause the least damage to himself to meet the 2 unavoidable attacks. I saw that the man's waist twisted unnaturally like a snake, avoiding Shen Yi's kunai to the limit, and Yatanya, who was facing him, directly resisted with a samurai sword. It's just that Shen Yi changed kunai's direction at the last moment of contact, and even though the masked man tried his best to hide, Shen Yi was hit by Shen Yi quite suddenly. And the claws on the front are also retreating with 1 blow and are not greedy. After discovering that Tanya can't bring frontal damage to the masked man, he twisted away and stopped. The masked man, who had time to react, wanted to turn around and deal with Shen Yi behind him, but at this moment, Shen Yi had already run away after he succeeded, so how could he give him a chance to react? After turning around, he found that the masked man roared like a big wild boar. You 2 brats managed to piss me off, so you 2 will die here today. He didn't care about the absence of the long knife in his hand. At this moment, the masked man released a Shira-like aura, which looked extremely terrifying and strange. Is this a curse mark? Regarding this power, Shen Yi also felt an indescribable discomfort. The only way he could think of to instantly improve his combat power was the curse seal. Sure enough, after the aura all over his body ended properly, strange lines appeared in the few places where he could show, and the mask on his face also fell off. Before the 2 of them noticed the man's face, his face was completely covered by the curse mark, and then he turned into a mermaid-like monster that looked like a shark on land. Tremble, tremble for my power. You 2 brats are honored to die under my power. The power exuded by the masked man after the transformation made people feel palpitations, as if the surrounding air had turned into muddy water, making it difficult to breathe. Die. Before Shen Yi could recover from the liquid-like murderous aura, a gloomy voice sounded from behind Shen Yi. After transforming, it has improved so much. In the blink of an eye, the monster ran directly behind him. Before he had time to think about it, Shen Yi flew directly to Thunder God to use it, but the monster who had just been teleported to kunai also arrived at the same time. Obviously, the monster's observation ability and speed had grown by leaps and bounds. After flying Thunder God several times in a row without getting rid of the monster, Shen Yi had already started to feel some signs of chakra overdraft. His breathing gradually became short of breath, and his body's reaction began to be unable to keep up, and he was almost punched in the waist by the monster a few times. I can't go on like this, think of a way. Although this is completely an emergency situation, the task of the ninja is to constantly fight against the unexpected situation until the task is completed. At this moment, even a traveler like Shenyi who is familiar with Hokage's direction has no choice. And the claw on the side can only stare anxiously. The speed of the two people in front of them is too fast, not at the level that he can participate in the battle at all. The masked man was quick enough to react, but after turning into a monster, he turned into a black line in the air, making the claw dare not go up, for fear of accidentally injuring allies. If you only have this level, then you can die. Once again, the transformed monster and Shenyi appeared next to a kunai at the same time, but this time the monster's tone seemed to lose patience, and he was directly preparing to kill Shenyi. Even if you want to eat me, I have to knock out a few teeth for you. Unwillingness, anger, regret, all kinds of emotions emerged and turned into the last bit of chakra in Shenyi's body. Back to the days, Shenyi was only a few centimeters closer to the monster, and even the protruding horn of the monster almost scratched Shenyi's face. Using Wei Tian at such a close range, even as fast as this monster, he couldn't dodge it. In this way, the two directly used their full strength to fight in the air. A figure was sent flying from midair, and fell to the ground extremely fast. After the dust cleared, Shenyi's figure was revealed. This battle was defeated by Shenyi. However, the monster was not feeling well, and his face also suffered a lot of injuries, and the clothes on his body that didn't even have any wrinkles were now tattered, and he looked extremely embarrassed. Ahem, the gap in strength is too great. After falling to the ground, Shenyi was gently lifted up by his claws, but now he was spitting blood from his mouth, and his bones were severely deformed. Obviously, he was seriously injured after hitting the monster hard just now. Don't worry, as long as I'm still standing, he won't be able to touch you. Shenyi's fall seemed to be a reason for Claw to fight, and Kuromaru, who had turned into a dog form, reverted back to a beastman state that was almost the same as Claw's. Don't run away, seek help. At this moment, Shenyi's utterances have been intermittent, and he can't even utter a complete sentence, but at this moment he is still thinking about the safety of his companions in front of him. I don't know when, Shenyi already had a feeling that he should belong here. For his companion, he was willing to sacrifice himself, but the companion in front of him was also the same. The blood-stained hand was put back on Shenyi's body by the claws, and he comforted himself, "Don't worry, I will protect my companion." After saying that, Claw still took a nostalgic glance at Rizai who was still lying on the ground not far away. At this moment, Rizai was still in a coma. It seemed that the strength of the masked man would be terrifying even if he didn't transform himself. Even so, the back of the claw was still so firm. Smelly monster, I will fight against my aunt. Are all the little Konoha ghosts rushing to die now? The masked man who turned into a monster seemed to enjoy the pleasure of torturing his prey to the point of no hope. After beating Shenyi almost to death, he was not in a hurry to end Shenyi, and showed full interest in another ninja who came up to die. A blood-red pill was taken out of his pocket. Claw swallowed it without hesitation, and then trembling all over, he merged with the black pill in the smog that filled the sky. Inuzuka Ryu human-beast hybrid transformation, two-headed wolf. After a terrifying wolf howl, the smoke gradually dispersed, and a super-large black pill with two heads appeared at the place where the claw disappeared. It turned out to be a two-headed wolf. But Shenyi felt relieved after thinking about it. After all, Ya could use this trick not long after becoming a djinn, so it's not surprising that his mother could use it when she was young. The power of this move can be said to be extremely terrifying, but Shenyi also knows that the effective time of this move is also very short. If it exceeds this time, it will definitely be finished. It's just that the monster doesn't seem to have this meaning. It's interesting. Let's see what kind of enjoyment you can bring me. After finishing speaking, that strange man actually became the boss with one fist. Shenyi could see clearly that he didn't use the Akadao clan's transformation technique, but his body became that size in an instant. Teeth. The strongest punch. The place where the two fought was dusty, and the powerful force shot the surrounding floor tiles everywhere, and even the rooms made of thunderstones showed signs of damage. But the powerful momentum came and went quickly, and after a moment of collision, both Claw and Kuromaru rolled back to Shenyi's side, unconscious. Ahem. PFF'd. The brat is quite capable. Such a powerful monster was actually injured in the battle with Fanglangya. Shen Yi staggered and wanted to stand up in front of the other two, but at this moment, he was so seriously injured that it would be painful to move even a little, let alone stand up. My little devils, I take back what I just said. You really have a way. It's a pity that this is the end. The monster reincarnated into a human form and staggered out of the smog, with the strength left by the impact of the fangs on his body, but the katana sword in his hand was still tight. You guys did give me a thrill, but now die. Looking at the samurai sword raised high, Kamiya's eyes were full of remorse. If he hadn't made this decision, he might be enjoying the long-lost Ichiraku ramen in Konoha village, and he might still be accompanied by Tsunade, but it's just a short time to leave this world. I'll see who dares to touch my younger brother. Just when Shen Yi thought of Tsunade, Tsunade's voice seemed to come from his ear. Could it be that there will be auditory hallucinations before death? Shen Yi said with a wry smile. Shen Yi, you are not allowed to die. I will not let my brother die again. This time, Kamiya heard clearly, it was indeed Tsunade's voice. The closed glasses opened suddenly, and Tsunade, who was about to cry, was in front of him, constantly using medical ninjutsu. Sister Tsunade, lighten up. Given the rare chance of surviving, Shenye finally let out a sigh. If there is anyone he can trust the most when he comes to this world, then this person is undoubtedly Tsunade. Shenyi, that's great. Ahem, now is not a good time to catch up on the past, Tsunade. A burst of discordant voices broke the warm scene, and Shenye turned around with difficulty to find that it was Zilai, who looked sourly at himself lying on the ground with a jealous face. That's right, brother Zilai, do you think you can help the enemy in front? Smelly brat, I shouldn't have come to save you. But after all, Shenye is clear when it comes to action, and Zilai will never be ambiguous. Little Shenye, don't talk anymore, you are seriously injured, did that fool do it? Tsunade gritted his teeth and asked while recovering Kamiya's injury. By the way, Tsunade-san, go and see the claws and the day, they are both injured. Don't worry, with me, the situation of the claw is not very good, and the daily difference should be fine. Another gentle voice responded to Shenye. Shenye lowered his head and found that it was mute. Seeing that his companions were being supervised, Shenye finally felt relieved, and then he couldn't hold on anymore and passed out. This kid is really serious about friendship. It's all because of his spirit. Jirai, who was confronting the seriously injured masked man, didn't take his opponent seriously at all, and would look back at Shenyi's situation from time to time. It's just that this kind of behavior was met with Tsunade's white eyes. Quickly solve it, and then take it back to the village and let me beat him up to relieve my anger. At this time, Tsunade was healing Shenye, and he had no time to take care of the masked man, otherwise the man would have been hammered to pieces by now. Obey, Lady Goddess. Jilai also casually took the palm of the man and took a step back. Immediately after, the loose emotion in his eyes disappeared, and he became extremely serious in an instant. 1 minute, I still have to find Orochimaru. Kindness. Faced with Konoha's timely arrival of backup, the masked man hesitated a little, obviously struggling in his heart whether to step forward, but when he was struggling, Zirai, who was on the side, had already shot with all his strength. You actually did such a cruel thing to my best friend's younger brother, so be prepared. While the distance keeps getting closer, Jiraiya's hands are also constantly forming seals, obviously trying to solve it quickly. Smelly ninja, do you think that only 3 people can keep me? The masked man found another mask from somewhere and put it on. He never let these people see his true face, but it is not difficult to see from his tone that he already has a heart of fear. As soon as he said the harsh words, the masked man turned around and ran away without any hesitation. He really explained to the fullest that a good man doesn't suffer from immediate losses, but it's a pity that Zilai never let him go from the beginning. Fire escape, big flame bomb. A huge fireball came out of Jiraiya's mouth, and went straight to the masked man's head. If the masked man didn't dodge, he would hit him, who fled a second later. Jilai, who released the great flame bullet, was obviously full of confidence in his own jutsu, and did not release other ninjutsu to confirm. The 2 flying bodies stopped behind the masked man, presumably wanting to play handsome in front of his goddess. But what everyone present didn't expect was that the masked man suddenly turned into an ugly monster, his speed suddenly became faster, and he slipped dangerously past the big flame bomb. Faced with this scene, Zilai really couldn't think of it, but even if he managed to get through, everyone saw that the monster's feet were burned by the fireball, and even if he ran, he couldn't run very far. Stop chasing, it's important to take these children to the village first. Seeing Jiraiya, Tsunade was also about to catch up and hurriedly stopped him. In her eyes, nothing was more important than her own brother. Although the escaped man was very hateful, compared to the safety of Shenyi, it was a piece of cake. Zilai, who failed to pretend to be handsome, looked frustrated, but he was dissatisfied with the masked man who was running away, and he thought of an expedient plan under his anger. Shadow clone technique. An identical Jirai also appeared in front of the crowd, and the Jirai who appeared last also nodded to them tacitly and then chased after the masked man. It's unnecessary. If this is the case, why bother at the beginning? Seeing Jiraiya's remedial measures, the frost on Tsunade's face eased a little, but Yu Chihong was still dissatisfied. After all, if Jiraiya hadn't been playing handsome just now, that person would have been caught by now. Tsunade, who is a teammate of Jiraiya's strength, naturally trusts him very much. Hey, don't you want to send a few little guys back to the village? Let's go quickly. What about Orochimaru? Let's not go back to Konoha, but go to the location mentioned in Shenya's letter. Tsunade's aura instantly became cold after hearing Orochimaru, and he was very contradictory and extremely angry. More than a day ago, I was drinking with Jing Yin in Konoha's tavern, and an encrypted message was delivered to me, and the content on it was even more shocking. Orochimaru kills the game, come to the rescue quickly. Just a few words with the address and name. This is the message sent by Kamiya to Tsunade. Just when Tsunade was in a hurry to leave the village, he met Jiraiya, who had returned from going out to collect materials, and happened to take Jiraiya with him. After all, even if he didn't take it, he wouldn't know where to go, so it's better to bring it as a combat force. After more than a day of fast driving, I just noticed this under the perception of mute, so I came up with the next thing. At this moment, Tsunade was extremely entangled. Although she had long felt that Orochimaru was not normal, she never thought that the current Orochimaru would actually use living people to conduct experiments, and would also target her younger brother. This is the person he is closest to after inheriting the rope tree. Tsunade will never let Orochimaru succeed. The three of them quickly arrived at the location in Shenyi's letter with the three little guys on their backs, but the scene at this moment made everyone feel like they were walking into hell. The bright red blood stained the road steel at the entrance of the village red, and the words that were not clear at first were even more difficult to read. There were miserable corpses everywhere on the ground. Help me! A faint cry for help came from the feet of the three of them. The nearest Jing Yin looked down and saw that it was an old man who was breathing weakly, but after the old man opened his eyes wide and called for help, he stopped breathing, and his death was horrible. How is this going? Facing the devastation everywhere, the three of them froze in place, wondering if they came to the wrong place. There is no place here that can be called a village, and Orochimaru is not here. Ahem, where are we? When the three of them were shocked, Jiraiya, who was carrying on his shoulders, woke up first due to the lightness of the listing, but he was speechless after seeing this scene. No matter how horrible or cruel the scene the ninja saw was, he couldn't express his emotions, but the current day difference really felt angry. Although these people had only been in contact with him and others for a short 2 days, they were still fresh human lives just now, but now they have become an unrecognizable corpse all over the place. Who did this? In extreme anger, Rizai asked this sentence angrily, but the three of them were doomed to shake their heads helplessly waiting for him. Compared with the young ninja who just graduated from the ninja school, the three of Jiraiya have all experienced real wars. They have seen such bloody scenes before, but this wanton massacre of villagers made the three of them feel angry. Yo, you're all here, and you brought back our little heroes, thank you so much. The gloomy voice sounded, and everyone will never forget that figure in this life. Oshimaru, who killed these villagers, have you seen them all? Why didn't you stop them? In his anger, Nisashi forgot the honorific title for Orochimaru. It's a pity that his anger not only made him lose his etiquette, but also made him lose the most basic power of observation, but just because he didn't notice it doesn't mean that the other three didn't notice. You did all this. The first to speak was Jiraiya, the man who always regarded Orochimaru as his own brother, and his eyes were on Orochimaru's hands that had never left from the beginning to the end. Those hands that should have been as white as a woman's were now covered with fresh blood. There's nothing I can do about it. Who made Shenye not cooperate with me? I don't even want to find these people to replace him in the experiment. He actually responded directly. The four of them froze in place again, but what surprised them even more was still behind. It's a pity that the effect of this group of people is not as good as that of ninjas. Sure enough, physical problems are also an important variable to question. Orochimaru, did you also use the companions from Konoha village for the experiment? After hearing this, even Jiraiya, who has always regarded Orochimaru as a close friend, can't be naive. After all, as a disciple of the third generation of Hokage, he can also get in touch with a lot of news, including those helpless ninjas who often disappear in Konoha. Combined with the words of Orochimaru, it is obvious that he said that these people were arrested for experiments, but what is the experiment in Orochimaru's mouth, which turned good people into this way? Thinking of Zillai, he couldn't help but take a look at the corpses all over the ground, and the tragic image came into view, which was really unforgettable. You are such a person, thanks to our trust in you. Hearing Orochimaru's confession of his best behavior, the young and passionate Hinata immediately went up to fight with Orochimaru, completely ignoring the gap in strength between the two of them like a natural moat. Ninja, the technique of messing up the lion's hair. Zirai, who knows the strength of Orochimaru, will naturally not let the young and vigorous Nisai go up to his death. With a shake of his head and long flowing hair, he instantly turns into a white dragon, and immediately throws back the Nisai who ran out a few steps tightly wrapped. Little ghost, your strength is not enough to face such a battle. Your next task is to take care of the remaining two children. Jiraiya glanced at the angry Nisashi. His tone was irreversibly serious, and the firmness on his face showed his heart to the fullest. Anyone who hurt Konoha would be defeated by him, even his old friends. Nisashi had never seen such a ferocious Jiraiya, and the usual lecherous legendary ninja had such a side. Nisashi took Kamiya and Claw from the backs of Tsunade and Shizune in a daze, and carefully placed them on the ground to be vigilant. As the price for betraying Konoha, save your life. Tsunade's eyes were full of confusion and confusion. Although she was the first to attack, she knew in her heart that this battle was not easy. She still regarded this Orochimaru as her former teammate Orochimaru, but what he did now was really against her belief. What's the matter, Tsunade? If you can't do it, let me do it. As Tsunade's close friend, Jiraiya saw Tsunade's hesitation at a glance, but at this moment, Jiraiya's eyes no longer have any confusion. For him, nothing is more important than the village, let alone him Orochimaru. Even if his goddess Tsunade does something that is not good for the village, he will not forgive him. Jiraiya set off a step later, but Tsunade reached Dashimaru first, and it was obvious that Jiraiya was able to sort out the relationship better. Jiraiya, it's been a long time since I've done anything real. Recently, I just came up with a few tricks in my heart, and they are the right opponents to fight you. Jiraiya rushed in front of Orochimaru with an uppercut and was easily blocked by the latter, and he even said arrogant words in his mouth. Obviously he didn't care about this Jiraiya who had been defeated by him since he was a child. Retreating with one blow, this is exactly the performance of two equally matched people in a battle, but from the expressions of the two, it is obvious that Orochimaru is more relaxed. Since this is the case, everyone, don't hold back. After the moment just now, Jilai also understood that Orochimaru was serious at this moment, and that he seriously wanted to take his life to silence him, and the last bit of expectation for him simply disappeared in his heart. Exactly what I want. The two of them opened the distance at the same time and formed seals with both hands, but if you observe carefully, you will find that the seals formed by the two are actually the same. The art of psychic. The two called out their names in unison and clapped their hands towards the ground. A circle of curse marks appeared, and then the figures of the two increased in vain, and the white mist under their feet turned into two behemoths tens of meters high. Jiraiya, you brat, pick me when I sleep again, oh. One Snake, it's been a long time. Oshimaru, have you asked me to come out and prepare the sacrifice this time? Bunta, this time it's not about reminiscing about the past. Orochimaru betrayed Konoha. Jilai also saw Toad Wentai hurriedly stopped him as if he was going to reminisce about the old days, but it was a pity that One Snake had already launched the attack first. The long and narrow body shuttled back and forth among the gravel-filled villages, and when Wentai was shocked, he flicked his tail towards Wentai. Ding! A loud noise filled the entire mountain range, and the dust scattered all over the sky, only to see Wentai's short knife lying in front of him, and the extremely destructive tail was also drawn on the handle of the short knife. Looks like it's not a joke. Mrs. Wen frowned, obviously realized that something was wrong, and directly used her own advantage to jump into the air. Ji Lai Yi, prepared to use fire. Learn. Years of partnering have allowed one person and one toad to develop an incomparable cooperation. To deal with snakes, you must use fire. Fire escape, toad oil flame bomb. A pillar of fire spewed out from Jiraiya's mouth. The small fire pillar instantly turned into a prairie fire after touching the toad oil sprayed from Wentai's mouth, and shot towards Wanshi and the big snake pill on its head. How's it going? Seeing that the fire devoured Orochimaru and 10,000 snakes, Wentai also fell to the ground and looked into the fire. Don't relax, it's underground. Tsunade, who had been hesitating all this time, clearly saw from the side that the Huodun didn't hurt anyone or a snake, and even hid in the bottom waiting for the opportunity to kill himself. Taki woman, Orochimaru, let's get rid of her first. Good idea. One snake, who came out of the ground, turned his vicious little eyes to Tsunade, and said viciously. Master Tsunade is also one of the Sannin, don't underestimate her. On the way of 10,000 snakes attacking, Shizune suddenly stood in the middle and shouted loudly. Although she had been frightened by this terrifying big snake and her legs were weak, she still stood firmly in front of Tsunade as if to protect her. Until a hand was gently placed on her waist, Shizune turned around and saw that Tsunade was looking at Wanshi, who was rushing forward with fighting spirit. Don't worry Shizune, I can still distinguish how to face friends and traitors. After finishing speaking, Tsunade gently pushed Shizune to Shenya's side, intending to let her help with healing, and then lightly jumped towards the Wanshi who was about to come. Painful feat. With one kick, the whole village shook for 3 minutes, and a large area of land collapsed due to the huge force of Tsunade. The snake in front of him also felt the strength of Tsunade, and his body retreated like a spring. Want to run? Tsunade, who participated in the battle, has naturally let go of all other feelings in his heart. Since he decided to make a move, he will naturally go all out. Using the same seal as the other two, it was another psychic spell. The art of psychic. A slug emerged from the white mist, as if it had the same heart as Tsunade, and as soon as it came out, it sprayed a ball of white slime at the retreating snakes. The tongue and teeth are sore. Walk away from the snakes. The 2 streams of slime were all dodged between 10,000 snakes, almost impossible twists, and the slime fell on the ground and directly melted the ground that had been shattered by Tsunade. Sure enough, it's a bit strenuous to face the 2 of you at once. Orochimaru, who retreated back to the original place, said with emotion, but with his own strength, even with 1 against 2, he has absolute confidence to run away. What he is thinking about now is how to take away Shenyi, who interested him. Mute, take those little guys away. Orochimaru's greedy eyes were not difficult to see his intentions, and he shouted directly at Jingyin behind him, and Jingyin also discovered Orochimaru's intentions, directly picked up Shenya, and let Hizuru turn around and run away with his claws in his arms. I knew for a long time that I would leave Konoha one day, but I didn't expect it to be so early, and I didn't expect 2 old friends to send me off. Hearing what Orochimaru said, Jilai also sneered and said, Oshimaru, you can no longer be our friend now, you can be captured obediently, maybe we can see each other for a few years, if you resist, when we catch you and take you back, you will be executed. Jiraiya, who gave you the confidence to kill me? You have been able to defeat me once in more than 20 years. 1-to-1 is not necessarily, so what about adding me? The 3 of them formed a triangle and stood their positions. The battle between the 3 was so evenly matched. You know, Tsunade, how many dead people you have to contact as a medical ninja, but my technique can make people immortal. Don't you want to see it? Maybe you can see your dead brother. Hearing the word, brother, Tsunade obviously hesitated for a moment, tears welled up in the corners of his eyes, and his clenched fists were also loosened at this moment. Obviously, the rope tree has always been a weakness that Tsunade cannot overcome. Successful. Any moment of hesitation on the battlefield will kill him, not to mention that in front of such a terrifying Orochimaru, a little bit of being caught is a second that may turn the tide of the battle. Wentai. Kindness. But fortunately, there are not only Orochimaru and Tsunade on the battlefield here. Ninja method, the art of house collapse. However, There was no gesture of sealing, and Jiraiya just emptied one of his hands, and the chakra that was constantly condensing and spinning in his hand waited for Bunta to narrow the distance between himself and Orochimaru. Orochimaru heard Jiraiya's ninjutsu sound, but saw that there was no movement in his hand. He just smiled contemptuously and pointed the finger directly at Tsunade, who was trapped in memory. Suffer to death. The next moment, Orochimaru's neck seemed to be able to extend infinitely and flew towards Tsunade. At this moment, it was too late for Tsunade to react. Orochimaru's long neck had already entangled her layer by layer, and the two fangs, which were so sharp that they were not human, were aimed at Tsunade and were about to be inserted. Spiral pills. As Bunta's huge figure fell down, Wanshi carrying Orochimaru had nowhere to hide, and was crushed directly, and Jiraiya jumped off Bunta's body and went straight to Tsunade when Bunta was falling. A spiral pill hit Orochimaru's stretched neck precisely, and pushed Orochimaru's body spirally out at once, and rescued Tsunade from danger at the same time. It's okay, Tsunade, don't be distracted during the battle. The enemy will say all kinds of tricks to deceive you, but you must concentrate on facing the enemy. Jiraiya, who fell on the slug, consoled Tsunade with concern, and his concern was beyond words. Tsunade also slowly slowed down. The clenched fist at this moment showed the anger in his heart. I see. After speaking, he jumped down directly from the slug, ready to fight hand to hand with Orochimaru. You're really stubborn. As a teammate, Jiraiya knew what Tsunade was thinking, but he didn't point it out. He just let Tsunade jump down. The Orochimaru dared to lie to my old lady. After landing, Tsunade seemed to be in violent mode, exerting all his strength to the extreme, quickly catching up with the free-falling Orochimaru, grabbing the neck that hadn't retracted, and beating Orochimaru's handsome face. What I said is true. You don't want to be sure. How could you be so active? Come down and beat me up. Although Orochimaru was being beaten unilaterally, the smile on his face became more and more rampant, as if he was the real winner. To shut up. Kicking out, Tsunade's huge force was transmitted into Orochimaru's body like punching a sponge. For some reason, this feeling of punching freely made Tsunade feel a little fake, but I can't tell what is so strange. Hidden Shadow Snake Hand. Orochimaru, who flew upside down, did not choose to let his body fly out this time, but wanted to use the snake hand to narrow the distance between the two and continue to brainwash Tsunade. But just at this moment, a kunai suddenly passed through the hands of the big snake pill that turned into small snakes, and a thin figure suddenly appeared next to the kunai in the next moment. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Using the Kamiya's fireball that Fei Leishan rushed to, it sprayed directly on Orochimaru's face, and the face-to-face injury made Orochimaru extremely painful, and at the same time, the distance between Tsunade and Tsunade was stretched further. Sister Tsunade, how are you doing? Shen Yi, who succeeded in one blow, turned over and landed on the ground, and expressed his condolences to Tsunade kindly, but what puzzled him was that he was tightly hugged by Tsunade as soon as he landed, and he even felt a slight twitch of Tsunade through contact. In desperation, Shenye had no choice but to give up the idea of continuing to chase Orochimaru, and instead patted Tsunade's back lightly with both hands. Good boy, you actually sneaked up on me. Orochimaru's cold voice disappeared, but this slightly masculine voice was familiar to Kamiya. The masked man just now. Shocked, Shenyi quickly turned around to face Orochimaru, only to see that Orochimaru's face slowly peeled off like someone else's. The layer that fell off was exactly what Orochimaru looked like, and the face below that Kamiya also met once, it was the transforming masked man who seriously injured them before. I didn't expect him to be here at this time. You can show your talents to your heart's content. The more outstanding you are, the more I want to get you in my hands. It was indescribably ghastly to say these words from Orochimaru, whose face was half burned, and even Shenyi, who had been in danger many times and consciously calmed down, was covered in hairs when he heard it. The younger generation is Konoha's hope. As Konoha's ninja, I will never let you do anything reckless. It was rare to hear a serious sentence from Jiraiya's mouth, and Shenyi was a little moved, but the strength of Orochimaru was indeed crushing for him. If he continued to develop according to his current development, he didn't know when he would be able to leave his shadow. HMPH. It's useless to say more. Jiraiya, Tsunade, there will be a period later. You can't stay by Shenyi's side all the time, right? This kid will be the key body for me to study immortal ninjutsu, just wait and see. Oshimaru, do you think you can still walk away under our noses after doing these things? Tsunade was obviously very dissatisfied with Orochimaru's rhetoric. After all, they are also called Sannin. In her heart, the strength of the three of them is not very far apart, but now Orochimaru is actually ready to run away in front of the two of them. It is a bit unacceptable. But Tsunade doesn't have points in his mind, but Kamiya does. The Sannin duel that left a deep impression on him, although the Sannin duel in the animation has restrictions on all parties, but in terms of strength, it is still a bit difficult for Jiraiya and Tsunade to stop Orochimaru. But at this time, Tsunade rushed directly in the direction of Orochimaru unbelievingly, obviously wanting to keep Orochimaru here directly. Painful feat. As the largest range-shaped body technique that Tsunade can use, it seems very wise to use this trick to deal with Orochimaru who wants to run away. Unfortunately, as a former teammate, Orochimaru is too familiar with these two. Snake. The weird movements are not like human beings. The twisted body avoids all the flying stones after Tsunade's attack, and quickly attacks Tsunade among the chaotic stones. Destroy the snakes. Several thick and big snakes appeared out of nowhere and attacked Tsunade and Kamiya directly. Tsunade had no time to react under the crisis, but tried his best to block his body in front of Shenye with his hands crossed, preferring to get hurt himself to protect Shenye. Just when Tsunade gritted his teeth and prepared to meet the imminent impact, he felt an inexplicable force behind him grabbing him, and then his body suddenly appeared tens of meters away from the place just now for some reason. Brother Jiraiya, you are going to run away if you can't finish preparing Orochimaru. Don't make noise, brat, here we come. Following Jiraiya's reply, Chakra, who had been silent all the time, suddenly rioted at this moment. Even Tsunade, who doesn't know how to be in sage mode, obviously felt the strangeness. This time, the sage mode seems to be a little different from before. This should be the perfect state of immortal mode, look at Jiraiya's face. As they said that, the two looked at Jiraiya's face. The facial lines that were originally only a little had now covered almost the entire face, leaving only the nose and mouth outside. The immortal toad of MT. Miaomu Mountain has come here, join us. The two petals were taken off with both feet, and the whole person was crawling on the ground like a toad. Although this posture looked a little funny, the power contained in that body really made people dare not make a sound. Is this your all-time whole card? It's really amazing. Stop talking nonsense, I'll take over the next battle. Wentai, go back and rest. Kamiya, take Tsunade to a safe place. With a bang when Bunta disappeared, Jiraiya also chose this moment to rush to the distance. What a terrifying explosive power. Tsunade next to Shenye couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Jiraiya's power in this form can probably be compared with his own gigantic power. Although Orochimaru has never seen Jiraiya in this form, it's just that the atavistic body seems to have an advantage in strength, so Orochimaru naturally uses the same method to deal with Tsunade to deal with Jiraiya. But it was this information gap that made him suffer a lot. The stretched neck was caught by Jiraiya at once, and he easily picked it up and threw it into the sky after swinging it twice. What? There is such a reaction speed. Orochimaru, who flew into the sky, couldn't believe it, but at this time, it was completely impossible to avoid Jiraiya's ninjutsu on the ground in the air with no leverage. Immortal method, super big jade spiral pill. A spiral pill that was as big as two people emerged from Jiraiya's hand, and then borrowed the obviously strengthened feet to jump extremely high, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of Dashimaru. Repent, Orochimaru. The sound of bombardment resounded throughout the canyon, and even the mountains on both sides shook visibly to the naked eye. Orochimaru, who had been hit by this trick, obviously couldn't take it anymore. His distorted body fell limply to the ground as if he had lost its vitality and then remained motionless. Solve it. Before they had gone far, Kamiya and Tsunade found that there was no sound in the direction of the battlefield. Seeing that Orochimaru was motionless after falling to the ground, Jiraiya also exited the fairy mode and walked forward to see how the situation was. Careful, Tsunade and the others didn't know, but Kamiya knew that Orochimaru's skills were known for their ever-changing nausea, so maybe he was pretending to be dead at this moment. Sure enough, as soon as Shenyi finished speaking, the Orochimaru, which was motionless on the ground, burst open. After the split, Orochimaru turned into a pure white snake and quickly fled towards the mountain behind him. In the blink of an eye, it had already run tens of meters away. There is still such a move. Surprised, Zilai also chased after him directly, but now he is obviously not very good at controlling the fairy mode, and when he lifts up the chakra again, his body starts to swell a little, like a balloon. Brother Jiraiya, don't go. This situation is very dangerous. If it cannot be interrupted in time, Jiraiya will only be a stone statue in the future. Jiraiya, who realized his own problem, quickly stopped the running chakra on his body. Although he stopped turning into a frog, he also missed the opportunity to catch up with Orochimaru, and watch the pure white snake disappear into the vast forest. If I was a little stronger, I wouldn't be run away by Orochimaru. Jiraiya, you have done your best, let's go back to the village. Tsunade came over from Kamiya's side to appease Jiraiya. It seems that Tsunade already has some feelings for Jiraiya at this moment. Shenyi on the side also didn't dare to go forward to gossip, but silently went back to the place where he came to find Jing Yin. Sister Shizune, how is the claw? Seeing Shenyi returning, Rizai went up to ask about the situation, but Shenyi comforted him first and asked about the situation of the claw. After all, the claw was injured because of himself, and now Shenyi only wanted to hope that she would get better. Emergency treatment has been done, and the equipment is not complete now. It will be fine when Tsunade-sama comes back for a while, and the rest can be restored to normal after returning to Konoha Hospital for 2 days. Seeing that Shenyi cared so much for his partner, Jing Yin also smiled in his heart, but he still asked curiously, accordingly, your injury is the heaviest, why did you recover so quickly? Just now when Shenyi was inspected, he found that Shenyi's body seemed to have been severely injured, and his whole body was extremely hideous, but he cured him in a few minutes. Obviously, it wasn't his own medical ninjutsu strength that improved all of a sudden, that was Shenyi's own situation, but Rao Yijing had never seen such a perverted body in his years of research on medical ninjutsu. Shenyi just smiled and didn't explain it, because he himself didn't know what was going on. Just now he also discovered that his body seemed to be on the verge of collapse, but his body was repairing by itself, which is really amazing. System, is it caused by your upgrade? Faced with such a situation, the only thing Shenyi could think of was his own magical system. Yes, not all. The system after the upgrade seemed to know what a pun is, and said to Shenyi like a joke, this is just a function attached to the random ninjutsu after the system upgrade, so it can't be regarded as the benefit of the system upgrade. This, faced with the system's answer, Kamiya seemed to have thought of something. There are not many ninjutsu in Naruto that have such a terrifying recovery ability. In addition, he has always lived in Konoha, so it is unlikely to be a ninjutsu from a foreign village, so this ninjutsu is. That's right, it's the forbidden technique on Tsunade, the technique of Baihao. It turned out to be the most powerful combat medical ninjutsu among Naruto. Shenyi almost jumped up excitedly. If it wasn't for the many people around watching, he just wanted to shout out to celebrate his adventure, unexpectedly having such good luck to steal this skill. Wait a minute, it seems that this ninjutsu was not stolen. I don't seem to remember that the system said that I stole Baihao's jutsu. That's right, this is the power of the system upgrade. You can extend a stolen skill and regain a powerful ninjutsu. It may be a forbidden technique, or it may be an S-level ninjutsu. It's just that it needs to be accumulated for a certain period of time before it can be reused. Regarding this, Shenyi only had 2 words to say, against the sky. This is 2 against the sky. I stole the giant power from Tsunade and suddenly extended it to become a Baihao technique. Doesn't this mean that in future battles, he can become an unbeatable Xiaoqiang? Then how many skills have I extended so far? Just 1, and the extension of this skill is completely random, but the ninjutsu extended are all powerful ninjutsu. Hearing the first half of the system's sentence, Shenyi felt a little uncomfortable, but he made up for his dissatisfaction in the second half of the sentence. However, Baihao Jujutsu, as the ninjutsu that Shenyi can touch at this stage, is considered the strongest, even though it is passive. But just when Shenyi was extremely excited about his new ninjutsu, waves of weakness hit him. Unlike the usual chakra depletion, this time the weakness was more like the sequelae of burning life. Shenyi felt oppressed by the sea water. It seems that this should be a sequela of Baihao's technique, and it seems that it can't be used casually as imagined. After a wry smile, Shenyi also took the two of them to the ruined village that couldn't be seen as it was originally. At this time, the slug summoned by Tsunade has disappeared, and only Tsunade is left in the ruins after the battle to heal Jiraiya, and Tsunade and the other three are relieved to see that the other three are safe. After burying the corpses of these villagers, go back to Konoha. While standing, Tsunade gestured for Mute to heal Jiraiya's wounds, and he was also in charge of the more severely injured claws. After several people nodded in unison, they began to move their hands. I said, Shenyi, why do you dare to go up when facing Dashawan? Jing Yin, who treated Jiraiya, admired Shenya's performance very much. Although there was a huge difference in strength, Shenye was not inferior in terms of bravery. But this sentence obviously irritated Shenye a little, and he clenched his hand, digging with a shovel tightly. My strength is too far apart. In the future, when facing such things, I can only watch from the sidelines, if I can't become stronger as soon as possible. Shen Yi's words were not false. The way Orochimaru looked at him just now was like a hunter staring at the prey in the hunting ground, and the fact is also the same. With his own strength, it can be said that there is almost no room for resistance against Orochimaru. But you are a ninja who just graduated from ninja school a few days ago. It is normal to face a ninja like Orochimaru. Besides, you still have a long way to grow, as long as you. I don't have that long. The pressure Orochimaru put on me is like a needle hanging from the top of my head, stimulating me all the time. I don't have time to become stronger little by little, I need to become stronger as much as possible. The exhausted roar made everyone's eyes fall on Shen Yi, especially Jing Yin, who was talking to him just now, was obviously taken aback, but Shen Yi also realized his impoliteness, bowed to everyone, dropped the shovel and left alone, leaving behind everyone who didn't know why. Only he knew the pain in his heart. After walking to an open space, Shen Yi squatted on the ground and kept thinking about the past. His own performance is the best in all aspects among the students in the same class, and it is inevitable that showing strong strength will attract the attention of others. However, whether it is Orochimaru, Danzo, or ninjas from other countries, it is impossible for him to grow up smoothly. At this moment, Shen Yi finally has the idea of doubting himself for the first time. Maybe I should keep a low profile, or admit cowardice to ensure my survival. Maybe I should ask Danzang to be humble and beg to forgive myself, so as to climb this big tree to protect myself. Perhaps. No possibility. Today they are afraid of my growth rate, tomorrow I will make them afraid of my strength. Why do geniuses have to be humble? What if they don't have a background? So what if there is no tail beast plugin? Wouldn't it be hundreds of times stronger than them that I have such a powerful plugin with a super system? I am Shen Yi, I will go on my own way, and I will become the future overlord of the ninja world. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.